Okay, so whoever's here watching the recording, no one's here yet. I'm just going to announce this going live on the Twitters and then maybe get into some interesting discussions. Today's going to be a bit of a low-key session because it's been a very busy week. So let's see how it goes today. Alright, time to publish the stream. There's the copy link. Thank you. Back to Twitter. Time to dig out my own tweet. Okay, today is a chill session and cover lots of topics. Perfect. There we go. I guess I'll retweet it from the event modeling account as well, just in case. Tweet, and I guess the people that know about the Meetup can search for event modeling in meetup.com and join us on Zoom. I think I'll start that Zoom session now. Apparently this is a new version of OBS. I heard some cool new things about it. Running on Wayland now for Linux. So if anyone understands what Wayland is, that's the modern display system for displaying actual desktop contents. My Linux has had this outdated Xorg server for a while, and so I'm happy to see all these Wayland protocol and standard being implemented across the different Linux distros. That's pretty cool. And we got another 10 minutes before the official start of the meetup, so I went live a little earlier to allow people to join in and chat for a longer time if they want, and also to give myself some time to clean up some of the issues with the streams. Sometimes I forget to edit the title and other YouTube and Zoom housekeeping things, so going live a little early is a little bit easier. Yeah, so Zoom. Let's see if we can join. Find if someone can join us here. Oh, how come I am signed out of my Zoom? Oh, I know. I had to rotate my passwords, so everything's not working. Rotate your passwords, folks. Started using KeyPass, but I want this. I think OnePass has a really good Linux client now, a Linux first client, which is great. So I might switch to that. I think database. Sorry, the password databases are highly portable. I mean, even if they're not, I can very easily migrate quickly. And soon it'll be time to rotate my master password too. Maybe we can talk about security as well today. Come on, Zoom. Why is it taking forever? Let's try that again. Sign in. Okay, now it worked. That's really odd. Should probably edit this. have it named generically Adam's Zoom meeting, but it's about the meetup. So call it what it's supposed to be called. Save that. I don't want to do any of that, and then we can there we go. So we're live on Zoom. Again, if you want to join, do find out the Zoom link on Meetup. Just search for event modeling on Meetup, and it's still the Vancouver, Canada area. So I know meetup.com is kind of a pain to deal with because they're mostly to do with in-person local meetups. So in order to find this meetup, which is global.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. We have a first participant here. And I guess I don't need the... So, it's an interesting thing. Maybe I should... I'm not sure if I should join Zoom from my phone, just to have someone on Zoom, so people can see me on Zoom. Let's see, maybe that's what I'll do. I have my phone here on a little stand, which should be easier. If you have questions about anything, feel free to chat either in the YouTube video. That's where we're going to have a lot of the overlays in the YouTube video. There's a bit of a delay on YouTube, 7-10 seconds, something like that. Should probably remove the lag. I think you can do a much more responsive stream. I do have a good internet connection. It's fiber up and down 1 gigabit, so even if I do something that with that amount of real-time action, then yeah, I should be able to do that. We got 5 minutes to go before we start. Let's see, can I prepare some other streams here? Scene with Zoom. Well, that's our Zoom here. That doesn't look good. I sometimes share the screen here, so let's see. Okay, good. And if we want to discuss something, I'll get the event modeling tutorial Miro board up. Our share screen here. And I'm using Rambox as a way to manage memory and CPU usage by web heavy things. So it also manages tabs that you'd have open quite often. You know, you always have your Gmail open or your Twitter open in a tab. Browsers have add-ins to manage tabs, but I like the way Rambox gives you more control over that. So you'll notice it'll start showing this usage being yeah, I need to reload because CPU overload and all that kind of stuff. So let's get that out of there. I'm still sharing the wrong screen here. Why is that doing that? And that's moved over. That's not good. Okay, here's the screen share. Screen share with Zoom guest. That Zoom guest doesn't look too good. Can't really find the window for Zoom either. Where did it go? Interesting. It says I'm talking. Zoom's kind of weird sometimes. Stop sharing for a second. Let's see if we can do this again here. View is speaker view. Maybe I have to have that as default here and then share the screen again. And then Rambox Pro, which has our browser tab. There we go. Participants. Okay. It's very strange because I don't actually see that window. It's very odd. Interesting. Okay, 2 more minutes and we're going live. This is way too big. Let's shrink down the other person here. You can have them on or off. This kind of moves over. Okay, so in this case, I can move that. I think it's just a copy of this scene. Screen capture. So if I get rid of the second one, that's me, that's the browser. I have the browser here. Okay, so if I get rid of the browser here, oops. Subtract the browser, you should, yes. Remove the browser, go back to this browser. Here I can copy it and put it in here. Paste, and then move it down. Move it down, move it down. Yep, there we go. So now, I think we're good now. Although, this zoom is in the wrong place again. All right, housekeeping done. We got less than a minute to go. Only got 3 viewers, that's okay. Denny's, more people joining. Should have some good discussions. Why am I... Interesting. I'm always double checking the colors on the live stream because sometimes it's kind of it flips the colors, reverses the green and red or something like that. So things that are yellow look blue and vice versa. Not sure how that's happening. Wonder if I have if anyone's curious for my OBS setup.
Yeah, the palette is like pretty fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine now. It's sometimes it's flipped them. I'm not sure if it's just the OBS monitor
Oh, I
that
see.
flips. I think the stream on YouTube was fine, but something always kind of flipped on my colors before. I don't think it's a Linux only thing. I've seen that happen on other systems, but it's all good. I think it's all taken care of now. And since we have people speaking, I guess we can go to the Zoom guest. Oh, I was going to add myself to the Zoom meeting on my phone so people on Zoom can see me. I think I'm a little bit too far to the left. Maybe I can move myself here a little bit. There. Now I'm probably not gonna... Yeah, see, I hate doing that. So, as I said, there was a OBS update. And I'm guessing something... some of these settings have changed a little bit. I seem to have lost the crop on this particular piece. Let's fix that. I should have a monitoring scene just so people can see what I'm doing in OBS. Maybe it's too late now. You can kind of see what I'm doing. I wonder if I gotta play around again with some of the Zoom, integrating Zoom into OBS and YouTube. There's probably a better way to share something that's more accurate to the Zoom folks, so that when I'm switching cameras or scenes in OBS, you're actually seeing what I'm seeing. So let's take care of this. Is really annoying me now. What if I it's as far left as I'll go. I think that's okay. So let me get rid of this. My image here. Sure want to remove video capture device. No. I don't know if removing it actually removes the remove. Okay, remove. Yes. Oh, okay, I'm still here on this one. Thought I was gonna delete it for all scenes, but nope. As you can see, I don't use OBS every day, but I should be more used to it because I use it once a week. Just most of the time we're talking about proper event-driven stuff, not OBS itself. Okay, copy this one here and put it into the scene. Paste. Okay, so then I can turn off and on the person speaking. Yeah, that looks good. So yeah, if you want to be on YouTube, have your beautiful face on YouTube, you can turn your camera on Zoom and I can flip that on for you. And I keep forgetting to add myself here. Let's see, Zoom. Zoom is here. Okay, meetings. Start this here. Make sure I don't have. This meeting is being recorded. Oh, okay, good. There's more people being admitted here. Okay, admit. And I'll turn my camera on. Okay. So people on Zoom, you can see me now, right? Hopefully.
Yep.
Okay, good. Probably not a good angle. But that's okay. Yeah, so I guess we can start discussing some cool things. I did a large private workshop for event modeling this week, which was really, really cool. One of the better groups, probably one of the best groups I've been with to do event modeling with. Really engaged, and the nice thing about it was their actual problem space was a lot of legacy code. So we looked at really using event modeling for an event-driven approach to managing their large investment in their past software. So legacy software is usually something that's source of a lot of risk with estimates and unforeseen bugs because of the lack of knowledge in terms of what the limited amount of people that are in an organization can talk about in terms of the large amount of code that's accumulated over the years. So we found that the event modeling practice allowed a real mapping exercise out of the event model. So it's really about charting that code base from the perspective of business process and state, and removing that need to look at actual source code enabled a much larger participation. Lots more people from product from other areas were able to talk about what the existing system does and not feel unwelcome, because traditionally legacy code means that's for developer eyes only. So I was quite happy to see the amount of conversation that occurred that I don't see happening without event modeling. In organizations that are trying to tackle um, legacy systems and quote unquote legacy code and technical debt, it's really done as this is for developers' eyes only, and there's limited input from the other roles, from people that are guiding the company and what the objectives are, and all these other people that have so much input, potential input to help, are don't have an avenue to participate, at least not a good one. With event modeling, we're just finding more and more ways that it helps, and I think it's the simplicity and the fact that it's so approachable from all sorts of roles that makes it good. And as I continue to do our day-to-day business, I've continued to see event modeling helping quite a lot in these situations that I knew it was going to be helpful, but sometimes you get to see a company where it's really useful for them, and it's very satisfying. I feel kind of drained after these because I've been doing so much event modeling in the last few months, and if you make it your business, it's going to drain you. Depending on your personality type. I started looking at, why am I tired and all this, and I always thought I was more of an extrovert, but I think it's the jobs that I had in my life that made me, like, required me to be an extrovert, and I had to adopt that. But I'm actually an introvert, and one of those signs is how talking and leading workshops, etc., it's not an extrovert exercise where I get really, really energized forever. And the more that I would do these, I would just be bursting at the seams with energy. Um, it's kind of the opposite. It's an old adage that whenever you're in a meaningful engagement and talking to people and working with them, you leave a piece of yourself with them. And I really understand what that means now, that your energy that you have, your social, I guess, currency. You have a stockpile of energy reserved for being social, and that runs out, so you have to recharge. And I physically feel tired, even though I've been doing mental work, sitting on my butt in front of a computer. But I'm talking to people, and I need to have my mind firing on all cylinders and try and facilitate these. So, doing a little research and this week, just reading about trying to learn more about myself and my propensities to how I teach and how I talk, and my energy levels and fitness levels and how all of that relates. And I discovered really that I'm an introvert with the job titles in the past that were just required extrovert. So I think some people in the community look at me as, oh, you really like to be out there and to talk at conferences and whatnot. I think it comes from a different place for me. I want to teach people, and I want to have an argument about why event modeling is good, because I want it to be challenged. I've said this all along. I want, in order for event modeling and event sourcing and CKRS to be good, you need to, almost on purpose, and maybe make people like me be the sacrificial lambs, to be the ones that are pushing the envelope and getting into arguments with others. Even though some things that I talk about that may be extreme, I wouldn't really implement an extreme approach, but I need to argue that extreme approach to feel out how people feel about the concept itself. What is a safe area to recommend for doing this? We kind of touched upon this last week, and now I've done a little more research, and I see how a more holistic picture of how it fits in with what I do day to day, the type of work that I support, and the team that I have to help, and all the different clients with their different situations and their different goals. So I don't know. I'm not sure if any of you have that similar thing. I guess a lot of us that are introverts, don't have a job that forces you to be in front of people, and that's why we gravitate towards programming and these types of jobs, which is great. And I guess for some people, it's a crossroads when you get up to be a senior person in your field. You're expected to lead people or help or any of those things. So you start to have uh, a choice. You come to a dilemma, and depending on your personality, it might actually keep you back because there's an expected path for what you do. Um, and I'm hoping that through what we do, we remove some of those artificial ladders for people's progression in the field, and you can continue to be um, someone that doesn't need to or want to speak very often, but can continue to contribute. And our CTO is like that. He's not a very talkative person. It's just personality. Nothing wrong with that. Highly analytical and really awesome guy. Really smart and has been the backbone of the company. But there's very little need for him to do what I'm doing because the type of collaboration that we have with event sourcing, with event modeling, with CQRS, multiple models, all of these uh, traits of our solutions allow a lot of parallel work without stepping on each other's toes. The coupling is held in check, and so someone that's even in a leadership position has a much better way of communicating a strategy or infrastructure changes without having to gather everyone together and address them. Okay, this is how we're going to do things. You might have an odd chat message to all saying that we're going to do this in our read models from now on, but that's rare compared to what I used to do with Agile. There's a lot more in person, the daily stand-ups, etc. Those are that's where you need that level of connection to keep traditional projects in check because of the high amount of coupling, and the complexity of the systems tend to grow a lot faster. So you need to have your finger on the situation all the time, making sure things don't go off the rails, and so we don't have that. I don't know if you folks have similar experiences or not, but that's certainly uh, my experience. So yeah, sometimes the people that you think are extroverts are not. They've just, their situation in life has forced them to be an extrovert and be. I didn't naturally come to this. I remember still in grade 7 or something like that. Not I wasn't a small kid, but standing up in front of the class was absolutely petrifying to the point of tears. Like I couldn't stand in front of the other kids. So I guess somehow my career has pushed me, maybe because it's a challenge in my mind to get over that, and to see that if I was going to be anything, I had to beat that fear and become an extrovert, even though that was absolutely not the worst situation for me. I was much happier as a kid in grade 5, grade 4, 5, 6, 7 to be in front of a computer and not I mean, I had friends and played with them, but I only had one friend, one really good friend. I didn't have a group of friends or anything like that. So very, looking back on it now, things haven't really changed. I just learned a lot more skills to do that, to be extroverted or communicate more when I need to. But back to our CTO, he's exactly like I was, and it's fine for him to exist like that, and it's good. So I'm hoping that that I provide a way for people of all different personality types to not have such a work environment where the job descriptions push people out of what they like. And so with event modeling, it allows people to adopt the level of communication they feel comfortable with. It doesn't have that agile lack of planning. We need to have a stand-up every day and things like that. So that was a pretty good discovery this week about myself that I didn't I didn't really see, because I started feeling a little bit, like I said, tired, and so I started reading about, why is social interaction um, exhausting you? You're an extrovert, Adam. You should be, by the end of the week, have your tank filled up and be ready to, hit the weekend really hard and be so energized because you're doing what an extrovert's supposed to be doing. And I have the exact opposite. So, and I'm 47. I just find out these things now. So hopefully, if you're younger, you make these realizations sooner, and put yourself in a position that's healthier for yourself, or at least don't introduce things you don't want into your life. But so yeah, so here's another benefit of event modeling. You get to be more honest with who you are, keep true to the type of personality you are, and still do the work, and still collaborate with others, but without all those meetings, which some people, maybe you don't mind meetings, but what if the people you're supposed to meet with don't like it? You're not gonna have the best effect on that other person, even though you don't mind. So the fact that an event model allows people to collaborate um, a lot more without needing in-person meetings, even, or extra time to talk, is really good. I think it's a very mentally healthy exercise, and I've always talked about these event models as being kind of the system you look at together. So if the blueprint idea, people can just go and add to the blueprint. They don't have to necessarily have a lot of discussions back and forth, but they can together look at one thing and contribute to different areas on it, and that allows a more controlled way of seeing who does what. So I don't know if there's what are those personality types? Maybe I'll put that up on the screen. Introvert versus extrovert. What did they call these? INFSJ or something? I believe in a few of those things in terms of how you feel after doing a lot of social interaction. I'm not sure about the other letters in this. It's the Meyer-Briggs thing, right? INFSJ. INFJ. Apparently that's what I am. I don't know. But I'll post this here so people can see what I kind of read. So yeah, Myers-Briggs. It's been criticized quite a lot because I don't think our brains are very mushy with fuzzy edges of these areas. So to be pigeonholed into these 4 quadrants, or whatever that is, INFSJ, introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. I'm not sure, but yeah. Then there's the idea that there's alpha and beta people, that the alphas are the ones that lead, the betas are the ones that follow. But now that's even changing. That's too polarizing. There's other flavors of this in there. I don't think this is what I am. I just know that I'm the I. I don't have the E in the front, but I don't know if that's me, but I don't pay attention to the other letters. I know that I was just concentrating on introvert versus extrovert. Does anyone have any cool... Oh, we have that. Oh yeah, okay. So big 5 personality traits is something I was taught in school. Yeah, 5 big personality traits. Let's see what that is. Oh, yeah. I haven't looked at this. I have to. I guess I'll read about that. But I certainly started to look at introvert, extrovert. So when we, when we look at these different types of personalities, and how they work with how they work with with all these collaborative processes, right? You have mob programming, you have obviously agile requires interaction with people mostly. You have event storming and all these collaborative methods. You have a whole bunch of maps. You have wordly maps. There's a lot of in the industry. There's a lot more need to focus on collaboration and communication. So paying attention to these personality types is, I think, at least worth a look. Again, the science behind this, I'm not too convinced of, but I am convinced about the introvert extrovert a little bit, and I think that energy level of feeling drained after mental engagement is something that's worth at least asking yourself or thinking about whether you're happy with what you're doing, whether that cycle of gaining and expanding energy is something you're comfortable with, that it's healthy for you, that you don't need to distract yourself in unhealthy ways to get past every week. I think some people do fall into a trap of that, or if it makes them angry in the end because they're frustrated, then that can also lead to unhealthy mental states. So, but thank you for this. This was actually really cool. I'll have to look at it and do that. So, Rick joins us. Hello, Rick.
Hello.
We're having kind of an easygoing Friday. Just before you joined, I just said I kind of felt really spent from a lot of the event modeling that I did over the last. This week was nice. It wasn't an all-day thing, but I just noticed a pattern of feeling very drained from social interactions and speaking, and so I was just saying that I did some research, and I'm not actually an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I'm actually quite an introvert because the interactions drain my energy levels, and so this was one of my aha moments that I learned about myself at 47. that I did.
Oh,
I thought, rewinding the clock back and seeing how I reacted to needing to stand up in front of the class and talk and things like that. I'm an introvert. Just my job requirement for many years has been to speak in front of people. And the fact that I've learned how to do that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how I naturally would have continued. So,
yeah.
uh,
I
yeah.
think it's phenomenal that you've actually come to that realization. I thought you knew that actually.
Well, I knew I had aspects of it, but I was listening too much to what others were telling me. It's like, oh, you're great too. Why don't you present, Adam? Why don't you do this? Because you're extroverted, you can talk to people. I can talk to people, but it's not because I'm extroverted.
And it's an interesting thing that because it's important to recognize it for people um, and I think they got that um, those INTP and all that kind of stuff. They
Hmm.
have this designation that they call extroverted introverts, right? And
Yeah, I
it's
don't believe that
basically
one.
Well, no, but it's basically what it is you're an introvert, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you won't run away from speaking in public. You'll talk to people, you'll share your ideas, but you're not charged by it. You're not energized by that whole look at how much attention I got per
Hmm.
se, or look at how much, or really just engaging with the other person's life in that way, right? Some extroverts, they just
Yeah.
you know they're having a conversation, but they're also just learning so much about the other person, right? Because they just thrive on that. So it's important to so that's and that's kind of, I'm not sure the exact title, but basically there's introverts who will hide in a corner if you try and put them on a speaking platform, right?
Yeah.
and
Well,
there's
that's how I started. That
and
was
there's
me.
introverts that have come to kind of the acceptance of talking
Hmm.
in front of people, and they're okay by it because they know they get something out of it, right? They can accomplish things that way, right?
Yeah.
um, um, but it doesn't mean they, you know in their downtime they'll go search for a crowd, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So anyways, but it is important when we do these kind of like you were just starting to say there, these modeling and these collaborative things. There's all these like, and I really like to, think in my head. I try not to use the phrase every model is wrong, but some are useful.
Mm-hmm.
But right, so all of these classifications are oversimplifications. They're an aspect. They're just taken, but you can look at introvert, extrovert, right?
Mm-hmm.
Visual learners versus what's the opposite of visual learners? I try to think
Analytical.
analytical. That's
Well,
right.
that's what I'm not sure if that's scientifically correct, but that's how I
Yeah,
personally kind of talk about these
yeah,
interactions that I see and how the event stream fits in with the
right.
wireframes above.
And then there's people that are very example based learning, and there's people that are learned by rules based learning. Like, well, how does the thing work? And they model it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rules and models, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
we had a chat about this long ago on this
right.
channel, I
So I
remember.
mean, and
Yeah.
there's other classifications, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
can take the classification, like just take those three. Like, you imagine any crowd of people, and you're slicing that person is kind of a little more introverted, and that person's extroverted. But that's like that's an extroverted person who learns by example. And if you just set down the logical rules the way programming languages do, they can't do anything with it, right? They have to go back and process it for an hour before they can actually action it, right? Or if you show
Yeah.
them an example, they just get it, right? And other people, you show them an example, say that's great, an example, but what's the general rule? Like, if I don't generalize that to a rule, I can't action it, right? So, and you know and then there's the visual and analytical, and those people, and there's plenty of other classifications, and they're just oversimplified slices, but they allow you to think of, if you're actually having a collaborative modeling discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
um what like, I mean, I'm willing to go out a limb here and say that although you're a very good programmer, you understand the rules-based thing, you are much more an example-based learner.
Yeah,
Adam,
it's
right?
well, I think what happens, and I think this is something that we as an industry need to be a little bit more honest with each other, is that we still have on a pedestal quite high the idea that the best way to do programming work is to have a computer science degree and go through all the extra math and all of that. That's highly, like what you talked about, looking at proofs, and that is the type of learner that you're going to be. But then we look at the business world, and those are that's where we're getting our requirements. That's not very scientific, and we try to add these scientific things onto that work. So I think there's a bit of an mental unhealthiness from the expectations in the industry for how, as a programmer in your career, you're supposed to work. And a lot of times it's, the requirements are coming from a place, like I said before, where they don't have all the answers. And so you're supposed to fill in the blanks anyway. So that level of analytical rigor is really a waste of energy. It would be better to capture the bits and pieces that you were communicated to show better accountability for what you heard and why you programmed something the way you did.
Yeah. Although, yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, I can nitpick with your wording. I think I agree with the intent of what you're trying to say, and what I'll try and maybe
Well,
push
correct.
back a little
What
bit.
should my
I'll,
wording be?
I'll just no, no, I don't care about your wording. I'm just saying I'll push back on one aspect, and that is, you talked about like there's the right way and whatever. I think it's kind of learning when is it appropriate to dive into that level of rigor, controlling it. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us in technology, right, after we get forward, like, we taught, like, we get to a point after working with technology, well, go through these phases where, you know people talk about the fuzzy requirements, user stories, blah blah blah, whatever they're going to say, a picture, a word, a scenario, a business case, a business problem, whatever. But like, you get to this point where that's great and you understand the value of them, but over the last 6 months, unless you turn it into something more rigorous, you've got no actionable value from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and learning how to turn it into something with just enough rigor to take it to the next level, but not diving in, like, when we go through an event modeling session, like, there are some people that want to be crisp and clear on the attributes of every event as it goes through, right? Before they even get the story out, because that's they've learned,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's some things for them to unlearn, right? All of us, there's something for us to unlearn. Is probably the better way to say it. Is they've learned by habit that unless I get that level of rigor, I've just there's accidents waiting to happen. People are making assumptions, and we're going to dive ahead because into like nowhere land. Everyone say, "Yeah, great, let's go," and then just do it, and it's fully spec'd, right? So they've
Mm-hmm.
learned that, you know, people are treating this as a spec and
Yeah.
as a final spec, and they're trying to, in the back of their head, they're emotionally trying to defend from that because they've been beaten with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've learned that if I can force them to make this spec reasonable quality, I won't suffer the consequences of the accidents.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that stifles the conversation,
Yeah.
right? That stifles the learning, that stifles the aha moments where it's like, let's make sure we get at the high level, get a sense of what the scope of the problem is, and realize there's parts of this problem that we are fixated on, or there's parts of this thing that we're trying to make solutions for that actually have nothing to do with the problem. They're just things we think we should do. And so let's move those, let's exclude those for now, and we'll bring them in if we can prove they're necessary. So,
Yeah, we did that actually today. Sorry to interrupt, Rick, because before you joined, I was telling everyone about the event modeling session that I had for a legacy system with a client just over the last couple of days, and and that's exactly what they ended up doing. They thought the problem was that they needed some image processing done, and OCR stuff, but after exploring it and seeing it from a higher level, that legacy code actually needed to have different, more important changes. But it came from this discussion of understanding what they have and actually being able to talk about everyone's input into what the current situation is. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad that event modeling's helping start those talks, because that event modeling wasn't like your typical one for like a new for your new part of the system that you're going to spec out and do that. It was actually a mapping exercise of we have legacy and we need to understand how we're going to make it a better system because we have X, Y, and Z problems using this older system, or trying to improve it or extend it or whatever. And so the event modeling was more of a mapping exercise, but it was extremely helpful. We always use this interchangeably here, that we start off with an event model being a blueprint of how to build something, and then once it's built, it transforms into a map that you use to navigate and find things in your solution once it's there. It's kind of fun to go from the other side now, where by describing what's already there, you're now introducing a platform for having the discussions you're talking about. Just by saying, "Oh, look at that! I didn't know that thing was in there," or "I didn't know that's the way the workflow went," and
right.
it kicks off a whole bunch of discussions, because people entirely might rewind their understanding of what they had because they were just in one part of the company, and because this collaborative exercise exposed how things truly worked, it it jogged their mind a bit, like, oh, I had some assumptions that was actually working quite well, and that's actually not good, and vice versa on this other part. And so they start to think twice about what their primary goals were before entering the workshop. And after the workshop, they're like, oh, I have a whole new appreciation for these other people, and they're already looking after the thing that I thought was being ignored. And I have these other things that I found out, and now I can realign my energy with something that's going to be way more valuable. So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I think, and I've always kind of continually trying to find better ways to engage people on when they start the legacy conversation. It's a great thing because like usually by the time someone reaches out for help with some legacy rewrite kind of thing, right? they're kind of a little far down, and they're in solution space already, right?
No, they have no choice.
Yeah,
Their problem is is their solution.
right. Well, so here, but sure, but here's the usually they come as like, okay, we've got this big ball of mud legacy system, whatever, and we are going to rewrite it in microservices. So we would like to do an event-based thing because that's a good way to analyze it, so that can spec out the system, right? So and those are fine objectives, right? But if you and you always gotta meet people where they are, and the important thing is to who's the stakeholder that's missing from this conversation to get that next conversation, the real level going on, and what for a legacy writer, right? I always want to get the right people in the room that can figure out and get to the conversation which aspects of this system are no longer fit for purpose, right? And that's different, that they don't work well and they're bad. Like, it's just like, it doesn't matter if you took this thing exactly as it works and made it super uber efficient and scalable, it's still not fit for purpose. And right, and then basically, because maybe it never was, right, which is one aspect, but unlikely, because it got you to where you are, right? It was fit for the purpose that this had to get us through a transition, right? But
Well,
so the
no,
question is,
I would disagree with that.
so
I don't think that's
so the purpose changes.
yeah,
That's
but
what
it's not
so
I don't think it's a transition. I think it's just a cumulative capture of what's happened. I don't think there's transitions in legacy code. Legacy code is not really capturing something in transition. I think what it's doing, because people lose sight of the complexities in it and how to deal with them, is that I think it's piling up sort of band-aids. I guess in the worst case scenario, it's just a layer and layer of band-aids, and all you're always looking at is the surface band-aid, because that's the latest patch that's on the code that's making the latest requirements, and it is. And it is really lumpy and ugly because there's all those band-aids underneath that make it hard to work with, right? So I think it's not a transition. I think it's always in I guess our systems just continually, if not dealt with properly, accumulate complexity throughout time. So I guess you could call it transitions, but I see transition as going from A to B.
yeah.
But
So
really, this is more of an accumulation, not a
I'll step,
translation or
I'll
transition.
step back and I'll flip. I'll use that statement. Every model is wrong. Some are useful. And what I would like to say is that's when you're looking at it from a implementation point of view. You know, everything you're saying is great, right? And it's right. But you also have to, when you're dealing with a legacy system, you also have to look at it from a human, customer, and business point of view, right? So and I'd say, let's just separate. Just take two at, you should be looking, kind of like you want to flip it. Look at this side of it and say what part of the thing, and then you want to just flip it over and say, let's ignore the implementation. And let's just talk about what we're trying to accomplish and what we were trying to accomplish when we built this, and how that might be changing, right? Because, so here's the thing. When I create a piece of software with a big team and we get customers and get those early adopters, and we help them through this choke point of they used to not be able to do this, and so now suddenly they can, right? And that's great, right? Okay, in 6 months later, right, especially as other people start copying, it's like, the fact that I can do this is no longer my problem. My problem is that these other things that were behind that, doing it well and having those are my new problems. And that's table stakes now, right? You've actually changed the market in a way. Like, I mean, like you take a spreadsheet, nobody's, if you went to the old VisiCalc and showed people the original spreadsheet, look at this thing we can do. It's like people like, what are we going to do that? That's pretty crappy, right? Because they're looking at higher level problems, charts, pivot tables, data analysis, all these kind of things. Can I do any of that stuff with it? Because as soon as I start using it, yeah, I can add up numbers. Great. We all know that. But when I start working with my data, I have to discover problems with my data. I have to analyze my data. I have to do these things. And I expect So those are my expectations. The market has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The customer expectation, the situation, the pressures they're facing now have changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, when you're doing a legacy system, you have to get not only the technical people in the room that can understand how that system is no longer fit for maintainability, and it doesn't quite do, regardless of the reason, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, because maybe we just implemented it wrong, or maybe we, you know, we can't even tell whether that was, good intent at the time, but now it's actually the wrong thing now, right? But the point
Mm-hmm.
is, technically, it's not fit for purpose. But honestly, there's more than that. There is the workflow that people are trying to accomplish has changed over time. And that really, getting people to recognize that is brutally hard, because the soon they start with something like event modeling and look at the code and look at the thing, they're looking at the implementation
Mm-hmm.
and how to fix the implementation and how to implement that, make that implementation robust, efficient, constrained, and just understood, right?
Yep.
And that's really important. But then they also have to get the right people in conversation that they can participate in that conversation, but then flip it on its head, and it's, I don't care how it's implemented. Here's how our business needs to work, and here's how our customers have changed, right?
Yeah, this is why we, this is
Not only
the,
how
so
it's changed, but
here,
how it's, I just want to say,
I,
how the
I,
purpose is shifting.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
some of
no, but
the market
there's an
is
important,
changing.
point that we learned about this just this last workshop, because I came into it trying to help with legacy code, thinking, okay, we're going to map out all the state transitions in how the tables change underneath. And what was really interesting, that, like you're saying, the most interesting parts of that analysis said, you know what, I actually don't care about the table as much, and they naturally gravitated to the events representing, even in the traditional system, that analysis by looking at how the tables change. I think Sebastian's write-up is actually capturing that on the event modeling website. The latest article is by Sebastian, I believe, Bortz from Germany, and it's about his real life use of event modeling for legacy, and that, yeah, looking at it row by row is accurate, but it's not as practical as still capturing those things in event-like boxes. Or it just goes to show how far eventing is more honest, a more honest way to present information systems to humans. It's
Yeah.
how far, like, what, to your point of how far off our concepts are from implementations.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, you can look at event modeling from a purely implementation aspect. And honestly, you should flip it and just focus on purely implementation. How does that work? Where are the domain boundaries, or whatever you want to call them? Where the logical services and handoffs would be? This chunked up system, that's a subsystem, that's whatever. Like, that should be treated,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a contract with the rest of the system, and so you can actually focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stuff, that's important, right?
Yep.
But also flipping it to the, I'm not going to care about that for now. Let's talk about how the business needs to work, and how the people need to work, and what they're trying to accomplish. And realize this system that we've designed, being honest with yourself and say, this system has an impedance mismatch with what people are trying to accomplish, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah, I mean,
let's try and bring that out. Let's try to identify it. We might accept it. We might say, you know what? But honestly, to try and make it match the way they really want to work, that's too much.
I hate the impedance mismatch. The one thing that I want to change is that's overused quite a lot. I think impedance mismatch is a bad word. What I found with event modeling, or at least what event modeling exposed to me in true nature of people's perception of the systems, is that here's a way to just say, this is the information that you're dealing with, and this is how it's changing over time. Impedance mismatch, maybe a better way of saying that is, this was the way that you imagined the data, but here's the reality of the data, in the system.
Well,
So
maybe-
it's not about impedance mismatch. It's about people's abstractions and imaginations, which is great. I mean, that's how you come up with new products and find creative ways to solve problems and all those kinds of things. But there needs to be an ability to analyze what that is from the reality of actual information moving through time and changing through time.
Yeah.
And
I
I think is a stronger basis. I think we can start to. I think if we understand that reality, I think it's going to actually help us be more courageous to say, well, why don't we just store more things? And at least when we express those things, we know that if they succeed, we've already painted a picture of how to do that. And so that gives someone more confidence that their bright ideas are actually going to be implemented because they could tie it to reality for free just by changing the format, which is, the event-driven approach in specifying systems. Because it's really easy like one of those things was, how can I say that this happened or that this happens in my system? The most responsible, simplest thing that you can do is, by virtue of event sourcing, write down what happened. You're done, and that gives you so much value because it has real impact to implementation, other people's ideas of how it works, etc. It doesn't have preconceived ideas of what type of indexing you're going to have on that table and how it's going to live with. I mean, we're getting to CQRS and multiple model arguments here, but it still holds true that by looking at it in this way, you're now actually better enabled to quote unquote remove yourself from the implementation.
Yeah, I think it brings it up to a level that you can act like. I think it's kind of that. It's the inflection point which you can look at it the same model from a purely implementation point of view and know how you're going to implement it, and you can flip it and look at that same model from a purely business and real world point of view and say, does this meet my purpose? Let me walk through it as an example, and I'm going to ignore the implementation underneath and say, can I walk through this? Like, look at it from a business process, pure business process point of view, from per workflow point of view, or whatever.
Well, I want to tie this back to our personality traits and why I think there's another problem with this. So finish what you're saying, but I want to come back at this from another angle.
So basically, I talked the shifting purpose, but basically a lot of, when you look at the legacy systems, right, what they suffer, and this is the model problem, is it's models versus metaphors, right? A lot of legacy systems, when you find out, you're discovering the misleading metaphors that we used that helped us describe the implementation choices, right? But actually they're misleading and they're slightly incorrect. And great, they work on the surface, but then when you start digging in, you have all these problems, right? And the ability to replace those with actual mental models, right? Metaphors versus mental model. Like, I hate, everyone does the shopping cart metaphor. That's great if you're actually implementing a shopping cart thing, but it's not great if it's like, yes, I can get it how you can implement this with a shopping cart metaphor. But then when you really start working with it, wait a minute, like now when I try and do this, it's but it's like treating the whole life like a shopping cart. It's in my way, right? So those metaphors are dangerous because
I don't know. I don't think they're dangerous. I think that we're using an example that people can understand. I think there's a lot in terms of how I think of an entity in my mind is highly temporal, and I think humans do that anyway. That's why entities from earlier on in your life are forgotten unless they're really important. And I think that's reflected in our systems.
They are dangerous if it's a metaphor that's thin, that doesn't actually map the mental model and the business process that you're trying to accomplish. That's what I'm saying. If it's the actual mental model that the business people have and the people that work with it, that's how they work with it. It is a shopping. I treat it like a shopping cart. I use it like a shopping cart. I need it to act like a shopping cart. That's great. But if it's not, and you can take it, I can repurpose this implementation, all these shopping cart implementations, and use the shopping cart thing to make a quick win, right? But then it's like, now I want to do this, and you force me to work with a shopping cart. which is great. It's as soon as I start, it gets me started quickly, but then I fight with it because I don't want it to be a shopping cart, right? And I could probably think I'm just right now on the fly. I just can't bring up. There's a whole bunch of other examples that I know where they're probably more strong and you could see the difference. But I just can't think of any right now, and I think it's a sidetrack from what you want to get to. But I think I just wanted to get that these looking at a legacy system. There's a lot of these ways we looked at the system that are no longer correct, right? And it's because our understanding has changed and the world has changed.
Yeah,
Right?
we've been over this. Yeah, I mean, things are,
And
your business is mostly dynamic. Most businesses are, even if it's a static type of domain like accounting or insurance. The abstractions that work change with the staff that you change, even.
And we just have to be cognizant of that and kind of be aware of, what this one. So what, and so when you start to see that tension in an aspect of the system, and you might say, well, like, let's push away the existing legacy and say, what's the actual workflow that you're trying to do? Like, imagine it's all implemented. What would you want to do? And let's walk through it. If I was just basically, a team of people doing all the work for you, and we're going to Wizard of Oz this. How would you want us to interact with you? Right? Boom, boom, boom. And then suddenly you can kind of discover the workflow back and say, wait a minute. Oh, that's a different mental model. Okay, now let's put that in our workflow and say, let's map the old legacy implementation onto this new way of working, and say maybe maybe there's a small change, or maybe there's a rewrite because it's no longer fit for purpose. Right? So that's if you're not open to those discoveries in a legacy rewrite, you're writing the new legacy.
Well, you always are. Just legacy is something that's a really bad word. I don't like technical debt, and
So I think
I don't ever want to. It's I can see, oh, these things don't have unit tests. Oh, someone cowboy coded this. Like, yeah, technical debt might be necessary. There's stuff that I hack together that works, and my scripts are a perfect example. They don't have unit tests, but they do everything I need them to do. I get the notifications about whatever is happening. I have an email at midnight that's run by a simple script that does quite a few things for me. And I see it as technical debt that script doesn't have a test? Absolutely not. It's stupid. And I think your understanding of the system is really the problem. If you don't have an understanding of your system, then you try to have these other artificial patterns to make it less painful. But by making it less painful, you're actually hurting yourself, because you're not addressing the core problem. And that's the understanding of the whole thing. And that's where we started this evolution of like, well, let's just put this as user stories and user story mapping, and try and capture the spirit of the thing by talking about everything in and around it to give you that. But that's so airy fairy and like up in the world, up in pie in the sky thinking, and subjective, because one person's way of doing that may be another way. So you need to understand what's going on. And I can draw very quickly, or in my mind I have a diagram of exactly what my script is doing. And I come back to those scripts, and because the understanding is there, I'm not lost. I'm not going like, what the did I do like 3 months ago? How does this work? I don't have that problem. And where I have a large system that I know that it's something that I'm not going to be spending time on, or I need to understand, I'll document it in an event model. So again, we have some crutches. I always say this, and I know some people hate it when I refer to Agile as a crutch and all these other things, and domain-driven design, etc. But they are crutches. There's band-aids and crutches, and our industry is littered with them. And they even sound really good. The technical debt, the abstraction, and the encapsulation, and all these fancy terms are trying to help us out of situations where the intricacies of the detail need to be abstracted up so we can deal with that, because of lack of understanding and not being able to communicate what the thing's doing. And so it's a very superficial approach, and people think it as a very deep, insightful, and a good practice. It's being
Well,
sold as incredibly, really, good things. People say event modeling, oh, that's, that you're, that's a hammer, everything's a nail, and it's a silver bullet, and blah blah. Well, what about your agile? What about your technical
okay, but
debt terms? You throw that around like it's,
yeah.
like it's
So
got like it's what's the WD-40? It'll fix everything. Like,
I think that's if any of these things, if you kind of follow them blind, like honestly, event modeling is also a crutch. It just all of these things are crutch.
I
If
don't
we
think so. I don't think it's a
no,
crutch.
no, hang on a second. If we actually all got we fully
I
like
I get more understanding out of a system with event modeling than anything else I've tried in my whole career.
a crutch is not a bad thing. That's the
No,
problem.
no, no, no. It may end up being a crutch, but
Like
there's
if a
no
crutch,
proof that it's a crutch right now.
like if a crutch gets you to healthy, then it's a good thing. If a crutch is something that you take and use for the rest of your life rather than fixing your leg, then it's a bad thing. So, like, I mean, I think so. The word crutch is overused again as well, right?
No, it's not. I'm
But,
the only one using it to this level anyway. So
but
I
it,
don't feel it's overused because I haven't seen someone use it to my level yet.
well, okay. So, or you haven't listened. One of those two things. But anyway, so but that's the point. I mean, it's good. These are
But you know what the thing is that
these
it's
are
actually
so
one
the
more
crutch
thing is that it's
crutch is an
actually
example.
it paints me
That's
as
the
a bad
metaphor.
person because I'm saying I'm
That's,
poo-pooing other approaches, right? I'm saying like,
so,
oh, that's not good enough. Oh, no, I mean, if that's all you have, what are you gonna do? Like, hey, all I have is a raft. Oh, that's not a good boat. Go drown, right? Like,
so
no, you still need the crutches, etc. It's like, hey, go heal your leg faster. No, you're gonna need the crutch,
so I mean, I'll point
but don't call it something else.
the crutch in this thing is it's never going like that's a metaphor, right? And it's
Hmm.
always going to be superficial. So I don't want to dig in and argue about the crutches this, crutch that, because honestly, it's just a metaphor. It makes the point, but it's not a clear mental model. It doesn't. It breaks down when you start getting into it. All of
No, it
those.
doesn't. Wait. I see crutch.
So
So the reason it
you're
doesn't break down is because a
I don't think
crutch.
that's
No, no,
you
no.
don't
Let me
agree that
explain myself.
using the word
The
crutch is not a metaphor.
crutch.
Hang on a second.
Just
We don't have the same English then.
no. Hold on a second. I'll tell you
It's not a
why
metaphor.
crutch works really well. It's
It works well. It's a great. It's a
no, but I'll tell
metaphor
you
that
why
works
it works. I
well,
want to
but it's a
explain it to
metaphor.
you why it works in my mind. Is that the speed to which you can get to by walking on crutches is limited. Once your leg heals and you've solved the core problem, you go faster. That's not a bad analogy. That actually works quite well for quite a lot of things.
Right. So crutch is a good thing if it helps your leg heal.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying once your leg healed, it's pretty bad to continue to insist that that person use the crutches.
So well, so here's the. I
But
mean,
there's an
here's
industry. You can get a Scrum certification and continue in the same organization for 15 years, like at Facebook, and Kent Beck is there, fixing the same company over and over again.
okay. So
Right? Does that sound good to you?
here's
Sounds like
and
a sounds like a doctor's dream if they're charging by the surgery or whatever, right?
okay. I'll bring this back and I'll just make it a fun theme for the conversation, right?
Well, I wanted
That,
this to be more
hang on a
fun,
second.
Rick. It's a Friday,
Every
and
I'll
I'm
bring it
tired.
back to the game. The game theme for today for me is every model is wrong. Some are useful. Okay, so these
Well, our
process.
theme was a little different, but that's okay. We can
No, but
divert.
that's the. I've been bringing that into the conversation,
Okay,
so I'm going to use that again to make this point.
sure.
Scrum, Kanban, these things, right? Those are models, right? They're process-based models.
Hmm.
Um, they're great. They are by their nature, a model is a constrained view of reality, and some stuff's not in it, right? And
Hmm.
so there's other aspects, complementary models and ways of thinking. For something like Scrum to work, right, effectively and get you past that, you need complementary thinking. You can't just be basically. This is the challenge with, what people refer to, with Scrum and Agile is, people doing cargo cults, right? It's cargo cult.
Well,
Just call it
wait. That's a little. You're adding too much there for people to
okay.
understand.
We'll leave it
Cargo
cargo cult.
culting is a little different. It's
So
not. It's not trying to fix something
if
like a
you're
crutch. It's
just going
about
to
I want to
if
be
you're
as successful as that company. So I'm going to look at what Google's using, and I'm going to use the mono repo, or I'm going to use the
yeah,
Spotify method, or I'm going to be like Valve. I'm going to have I'm going to fire all our managers and be flat,
and or
and expect the
or
same
I'm gonna
results
or
because
that
that
company
fits
over there,
them, not
that
here, right?
company
I just
over
wanted to,
there.
I wanted to explain for the people that are listening what cargo cult means versus
Yeah,
crutch, just so that we bring
yeah,
them
but
up to speed. But
so
continue.
if I look, and this is my point, if I look over there and that company is highly successful, innovative business company, and I watch how do their team work, and their team does 2 week scrums. They do the scrum to perfection, like just like a scrum master would learn. Oh my God, right? It's like, wow, if I could just do scrum like them, then I would be successful business just like them. Well, actually, go look at what they do outside of the scrum process. Look at the way their business leaders talk about customers and say customer problems, and look at what they decide on, what work gets brought to the team and what discussions get brought to the team, and how they evaluate the work after the team is done. It's not just did that work get deployed to production efficiently. It's like, oh great, now we actually measure, did that actually solve the customer's problem effectively? Has that, has our customer, no longer having this problem? Is their work more efficient? What was the purpose of that? Those companies are doing that
Mm.
and those other things, and are highly successful using Scrum.
Yeah,
Because Scrum
maybe
is
they have
right up
enough
there in
money
the
to
organization,
make to
right?
basically not fail, no matter how badly they're doing. You can see
Right.
this in the
But
Valley all the time. You look at the Script Kiddie, Ruby on Rails crowd, sitting, on MacBooks in Starbucks in the Valley, and these successful tech bros and growth hackers in the Valley. There's so much money in the Valley. They could be throwing crap at the wall, and they have enough money to throw it so often that something eventually makes sense. And so there's this, I've won the lottery, and I'm going to do the tour around the world as to how to become a millionaire by playing the lottery. It's a confirmation bias from an entire section of the industry. So I don't buy it. And I've also seen, people come in and do Scrum or something, and that's the thing. They do it really well, but that's the only thing they know how to do. And so that's how they're going to keep their job, is by being able to do what they know how to do, and that's it.
sure. And
They don't
they're
actually
smart enough.
use
Smart enough
Scrum or
to
anything else like that to get higher insights or to improve their process. They
yeah,
are they're treading water. They don't know what the hell they're doing, and
sure. But there's also
they
much
don't
faster.
have a possibility to actually convey to everyone how the system's supposed to work, which is why we have event modeling, because that
Um,
was
well,
absent.
but here's what I want to point out: there are people today, and for the past year and bit, right, that have been using event modeling exactly that way. They're going to basically take
Mm.
their system, map their existing system and implementation to microservices using this, and turn it, and and great.
That's not
They're
true, Rick. I'll tell you why. Because it's not
you're
past the
saying
tipping point. No, no. The entropy
you think
kills it and
you're
stamps it
saying
out.
nobody's doing that?
No, no. There's a
There are
few,
people
but
already
there's no
doing
way that you can say that people are taking this as a cargo culting thing and it's actually successful for any period of time. This has the most daggers in its back at any organization if you don't have full buy-in top down, and it actually gets measured with results across the bottom line. Because where this gets adopted all the time is like, we've tried a lot of shit and it's shit, and this is our last ditch effort, or the company sinks. And those are the stories that event modeling collects. Not that someone's going by rote and saying, oh, event modeling looks good, I'm just going to do it at my company. There's no fucking way. They're going to have a whole bunch of managers going, what is this and why is it good? Every single person in the company is going to ask them that. So there's no
And
way that this gets cargo culted.
it, well, you're wrong.
Well, I've yet to
Well,
see it.
I'm going to say there is it, and that's where, back to the beginning, I said you got to get the right people in the room, because you can do this. You can actually take event modeling and do it at the team technical level, and basically just take the same old mindset where you had the architects and the dev, and they're just re-architecting the existing system. But this is, don't worry, this is just a technical thing. those people will take a tool like event modeling and use it to control the implementation and spec the implementation.
No, they won't. Every
They
single
have.
video on event modeling says that that's not how you do event modeling, so I don't think they'll do it. Or if they're
Oh,
doing
so
something like it, it's not event
wait
modeling.
a minute.
Just
If
like you can say, oh, someone's not
they
doing
didn't,
agile because they're
if they
capital A
didn't call
agile.
it a video, then no. This is what I'm saying. You're not acknowledging the fact that people can just follow the the notation and procedures of something like event modeling and not and just keep it contained in that implementation only box. It's possible.
Then explain why
It's,
UML's not everywhere.
I'm not saying it's going to make it grow to everywhere. I'm not saying it's going to cargo cult it. I'm not saying that's going to make it propagate to the world and be successful. I haven't said that, right? And you're extrapolating what I say, and you're actually dismissing things that I've seen because you're saying that's impossible. People could never do that.
Not
That's what I'm saying.
successfully.
The moment you say people could never do that successfully,
I think you're misinterpreting what I said, but
well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I want you to like the way you're replying. It's you're making assumptions about what I'm trying to say and extrapolating it to that's the way. You know what I'm saying? People can cargo cult anything
true.
if they have that mindset. If they want to stick to that mindset, and event modeling is not immune from that.
Well,
Right.
nothing is.
Right. Okay.
I can stop wearing shoes tomorrow and think
Sure.
that my feet are going to be better.
So
Just walk through the city with bare feet.
so I mean the key thing is when you see people start to take it on, and often these cargo cult implementations of event modeling, they stall or they just peter on, but it's like basically the outside world sees no difference. It's just they're implementing a different way, right? And it's just, oh yeah, we're doing a microservice implementation. They don't see event modeling. Nobody outside, they just see they're re-implementing the old legacy with the thing. That's
maybe.
the conversation hasn't lifted out of the team to the business, right? And that's
Maybe. I mean, some
that
people
happens.
don't have the buy-in, and so they adopt it within whatever is their scope, which may be just technical. And the design team is an aloof other part of the organization that looks down their nose at everyone else and say, our designs
or
are beautiful, and if you don't like them, go suck an egg, because we're the best designers that this company hired, and we're doing a great
or
job.
or the technical team, because of the business situation they're in and the reason they have this legacy situation is because as a culture they haven't learned to engage the business at that level. Maybe they're blocked, but like it's a two-way conversation, right? And it's not happening either way. And so if you keep that conversation not happening and you don't engage those people, no tool, no procedure is going to help you, except maybe if you go through it and you have someone who facilitating who can get you to the point that you realize that you don't have the people in the room and you should pause and go get them, then you have a chance, right?
Well, by definition, it's a collaborative.
Take their money,
But by definition, this is a collaborative canvas from the start, always meant to cross bridges between things. So if someone's doing something called event modeling and they're doing it with only their department, knowing that it's meant to tie UX, UI, requirements gathering, product ownership together, and they're only using it for the technical side, great. I mean, you're not doing quote-unquote event modeling. But you're using the mechanics of event modeling to understand, like a good example is this thing that we did here. Actually, I can make a use of our Miro board, Rick. This is a good example. Just hold on. For people that are, I know we can get into our argument because we know each other. I want to always rewind and just give some background for people so that they don't feel lost, okay? So I'm just going to go here and make this example of kind of like what you're talking about right now. And we have that when we tried to use it for a technical reason of just how does this template, this HTML template that shows all these entries, populate an HTML template. So here's an event model that shows, how that template gets populated, and you can see state going across left to right in time, and you have your actual HTML being built up, and we show exactly how that gets done. And at the end, you have your oops, why did I do that? That's not good. I need to get rid of that. How did I just put a table on there? Or was that someone else?
Undo.
I tried. It didn't do anything. Delete. There we go. Okay. The silly table things are a little hard to control in Miro. But anyway, this is how we got the shopping cart from our model into our page, and we dissected how we do something. But this had no involvement in product owners. It had no involvement in anything else. This is something that someone used, and essentially, it's if you're using it at this point, the only difference is you're doing sequence diagrams horizontally with no branching from UML. That's all you're doing, with some example data in a tabular format that's a little bit easier to read. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's not the goal of event modeling. The goal of event modeling was what we're talking about. We have multiple people talking about, hey, here's my user experience. People are seeing these screens. The business is capturing this data. Oops. Right? That's the what we need to do to succeed. The how in between blue and green, that's, my latest way of interpreting this, right, which we talked about here, which is what we want this to be. So back to your point. If you're doing X, but X is meant for some purpose, are you really doing X if you're using it for another purpose? Or are you just using the building blocks of that or the mechanics of that?
That's a great question. And so I just want to X, Y, Z methodology, process, whatever people are doing, right?
Well, use Agile. I mean, you're very familiar with Agile. People can go through the motions of doing... People go through the motions of going to the stand-up. But are they Agile? Or are they just adopting, having a meeting in the morning?
So that's Scrum.
Well, whatever.
Scrum's that. So Agile is kind of take away the capital A, and Agile is a mindset.
I'm just using things to irritate you, like that kind of language. So get you talking.
If you use Scrum, and that's kind of what I pointed out. If you just drive the process, right, of we have these meetings and whatever, you may even get some incremental improvements from the way you were working, right? Because you catch accidents that you wouldn't have caught because you had the daily thing and you had the handoffs and you collaborate with QA and basically you have a process and you're like, hey, wait a minute, why is that thing still sitting there after 2 weeks? Oh, right, we were supposed to work on that. You make it visible. There are things, and so you get incremental improvements, right? And that's the problem. It's good and it's a problem, right? Because you get a little bit of dopamine after using that for a little while because there's visibility of what people are doing. You suddenly went from I don't know, I just gave the team some work and I don't know, I just haven't seen that thing we agreed to work on 2 months and I don't know if it's done, when it's going to be done, and people keep working on it, right? So suddenly there's this visibility on what's happening where, and there are people on the team that benefit from that, and there are other people that say, I can work either way. It doesn't help me at all. So who cares, right?
Okay.
So you can get some incremental improvements, right? But you're not going to get transformative improvements unless you're actually collaborating with the business in an effective way, right? And so the people who originally got into the Scrum, they actually looked at, say, we're collaborating with the business, and that's going on, and the business is doing experimentations. That's the type of business we work with, right?
Yeah.
But then when it goes to technical, people want to make these waterfall long things, and basically suddenly we must overspec everything, and we know it's wrong because we've did big design up front, right? And to say, but we can't. So they basically said we can't work we need a spec to work on. And then basically they've said, like, well, back and forth, what's a method where we can make that just enough to say, like, let's agree. Like, people say, you want me to work in code, and like, I don't want you to come back, like, tell me what, let's work on this today and then come tomorrow and say that's all wrong, start something different. Like, give me, if I want to go heads down in implementation, give me a constrained divine set of stuff that I can work on in the short term, that is well enough understood that I can dig into it as a problem and implement it correctly. And then let's collaborate on the other stuff together, and let's agree what that stuff should be. Like, if you want to solve that problem, let's have the conversation. Well, if that's the problem you want to solve, here's your options. Like, for those early people, they were having this conversation, but they didn't know enough to encode it in their procedure, in this process. They should be having the conversation with the business. What problems are we solving? Okay, well, if that's the problem you want to solve, I can see 3 options. Let's talk them through. Maybe we call those spikes, maybe we call them whatever, who gives a crap, right? Let's agree on which option we're going to go with, and let's agree on the evidence. Like, our hypothesis, we're going to use this one because it's going to give us this benefit, and we're going to measure that benefit. We're going to prove that that benefit doesn't exist today, and we're going to, so they work that way underneath, right?
Yeah.
They
So
hold themselves
that's
accountable.
I see a lot of parallels with event modeling from what you said.
Right. So, and so what I'm saying is, event modeling is another tool from a completely different aspect that allows that conversation from that aspect to be more coherent. But it's not going to capture all of it. There's still got to be this intent.
Yeah. So
Honest.
to draw a
And
parallel,
event modeling, it's not going to do that.
well,
in and of itself.
so event modeling does do something if you don't have the time to, let's say, design the whole system, because that's a big design up front. Maybe you don't have time, and we're dealing with some clients that didn't expect us to finish that quickly because we're quite fast once we have an event model. That's a self plug for my company because we do things so fast with event modeling. It catches people off guard. It's like, oh, I didn't have that spec yet. That's okay. So we can have an quote unquote agile approach to it. And what happens is that the events and the state transitions, etc., state views, become the currency because we're working on fixed costs. That becomes the currency for doing things even in an agile way. And do I care that I get it right? Well, if I'm doing event sourcing, I have a proper traceability as to how I got into certain situations. Sprinkle in some data maintenance things that we're finally addressing, like closing the books, which we talk about all the time. We actually have a really responsible system for being able to do those pivots, which is what Agile always talks about. Don't look too far out or you'll never get going, and all those things. We have that, but we have a currency for the work in software, at least for lines of business applications. And that unit of work is that state transition or state view, and the fact that we look at it holistically from top to bottom, full stack kind of implementation way, is something that allows us to have that, what you're talking about, measurable piece of how long this is taking, and if you have fixed costs, how much it's going to cost to do whatever. And so even if we catch a client flat-footed, so to say, we don't have everything specced out because you guys went too fast, or we had expectations of our product owners to have all this done, but they fell behind because life happens. That's fine too. What we have is a really good negotiating field where we're talking about real impact to budgets and time as the currency of how we move in a best guess manner, because that's all we have. We might be replacing an older system. We might look at that older system and re-implement some of it, addressing some of the concerns that we can get quick feedback on. But we've made our own set of requirements, and that's dangerous because the inmates are running the asylum. It's not the product owners telling us what to build. However, those pieces are highly reusable. So I think that in a traditional approach, from technically or project management wise, I think that would be dangerous. I think you'd be in the situation where you're doing, it's expensive. You'd be doing 80% rewrites. Whereas if you do have the events and a ledger of what happened and a traceability of what happened, and you have units of work that you can talk about more intelligently, then you get to keep 80%, because that might be small adjustments to the current pieces. 20% of them get rewritten, maybe they get reordered, and a high amount of the UI and other things are reused. other things being said that people maybe don't understand is that the infrastructure doesn't change at all. It's really the same thing, and most of the differences in implementation are so tied to what the business wants. They're non-technical, so you're copy pasting a previous piece of work, changing the data in it, changing the unit tests, changing some of the logic about validating, invalidating a command or something like that, and then you move on. So I think, that's a quote unquote capital A agile, or lowercase a agile. Sorry, wrong one. Lowercase agile, being agile. I think with a proper transparency into up and down through the organization as to what's going on, where the effort is being put forward, that's basically proper agile. That's the transparency. That's the communication that agile was after and never got there because it sank with ceremony. It didn't actually have a platform to facilitate that. The platform was meetings. There was really bad artifacts to track that, such as Jira tickets, Kanban boards, sticky notes moving up and down. They were removed from actually what was being built. It was not in the same format as the solution that was being built. So I think that's why Agile can only go so far, because it always has to make that last leap into what it really means to own that system. With event modeling, you have that leap. You're looking at what it means at all times.
I think that's the point. And we use that. So agility versus agile. I think it's probably easier to say that.
Yeah, I guess we don't have to say capital and lowercase all the time. Yeah,
there's
agility.
Agile,
Sure.
There's this agile thing, which but there's agility, right? And actually, so the thing is, if you look at those other systems, there's sometimes what's obvious to you is things. There's a lot of like those early people who wrote these systems and stuff. They were fighting with how to coordinate work with people. They weren't fighting with how to do coherent iterative design. They were capable of doing that. A lot of these people, they were
true. Yeah, they were solving a communication problem. I think what we're doing is driving a little deeper now.
I think the challenge is, and I'll go back to what we talked about earlier, is that sometimes your solution, if you don't adapt your solution, right, for the changing purpose, right, then you're stuck with this, whatever you want to, cargo culting or just, think. So if I'm just running Scrum and I'm just taking that old definition of Scrum that was really solving a transition point in the industry on how to coordinate work so that I can actually work on it in coherent, trustworthy, piecemeal pieces. But you think about this. Think about any team today. I'm going to assemble a bunch of people that are individually very great, at what they do, right? But now I'm going to ask them to be a full stack team, carve things. I'm going to give them these problems, and I want them to carve this into end-to-end slices, because we've learned getting work done, not just doing the, we're going to do the entire database, and then we're going to big upfront design, and then realize we missed it, right? We want to get end-to-end because that helps us discover where we're wrong technically, but we're actually where we're wrong business-wise, and saying that doesn't do what we thought it would do, right? So we want to get those things. But now, if I ask the UX people from their box and perspective only how to slice this in end-to-end usable pieces, they will slice it differently than if I ask the back-end developers, right? Right? And so what a tool that's very event-based, and what's one of the things that event modeling and event storming for it, they brought in practices that a lot of the agile teams didn't realize they were happening for these successful businesses to run, right? Which was information architecture, which was business process analysis, right? This, a lot of the stuff that event modeling takes for granted in there, right? This concepts of events and this concept of a process with handoffs, right, is the way people used to design systems, right? But then it would get filtered into, the three-tiered architecture and
Yeah,
right?
Give it to the back-end team, give it to the
middleware
team, give it to the UI people, yeah.
They would look at that and say, okay, we'll design a system that will do that, right? But then that original thing is thrown away. They wouldn't test that it did that. They would say, now we got this project spun up to implement this thing we agreed on, right? The spec we agreed on. And our entire job is to efficiently, effectively get this done on time and under budget. And if we do that, we're successful.
Yep.
And we are not cycling back to the business change we're going to make, that those people who did the work talk about, we did this business process because we looked at the actual business process and the way our systems work today, and they don't match the process. So let's lay out the process. And so let's do something that matches the way people need to work. But that didn't come with the implementation. That was separated from it.
Yeah,
Right?
I think I want to bring the conversation back to personality types, and because what we're talking about is, how people with different propensities for being introverted versus extroverted, especially, or being alpha or beta, or what are the other classifications you may have of people, to say what they're comfortable with. I think one of the biggest benefits I've seen so far with this approach is that the format of, let's say, agile practices is meeting. And that's very unfair to a lot of people. Like, we have, one of our most skilled guys, that's our CTO. That's not where he wants to be. He's there when he needs to be. But if he was to go to a traditional shop, he would be pegged into a position. This goes not just for him, but for a lot of people. That in order for him to have psychological safety, he would be capped at a lower position. And I think when we're addressing some of these problems in society and where we work, we ignore what type of tooling and processes we're employing that enables these bad patterns. And it's a real big insight that I had into myself this week, really, about how what I'm comfortable with, what energizes versus what drains me, and being more honest about where do I want to be every day? What's my responsible place for my own mind, and being able to, if that's my goal, to share this with everyone and progress as someone that's helping humanity move forward and still can put bread on the table, right? So I think we need to be very conscious of exactly what it means to, like, hey, we have a great tool belt, and this goes like, oh, event modeling is really just another tool in your tool belt. Yeah, generically speaking, it is yet another thing you know about. But if it's a tool that's meant to replace a bunch of other tools, or potentially replace them because of problems, such as, I want to replace stand-ups because I know there's a lot of people that don't like them. I want to replace pair programming because a lot of people don't like it, for good reason. Sure. And can I get better or same effects by having a limited scope of work for a command handler? Therefore, I don't need to pair program because it's really easy for me to analyze whether I started gold plating or whether I've tested enough, because I have a plan. And so that's where I think where we began this conversation about psychology and, like, being safe for being safe for other people, creating an environment for people that's really good. I think
bring it back to there, and actually, so the psychology, create the psychology and environment. So, I mean, I'll kind of talk about like what the original intention of the Scrum Master / Agile Coach / whatever the bloody crap you call it, I don't care, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that person whose role was it to actually look at what's the biggest challenge for us today as a group, right? Mm-hmm. And then also their responsibility really was to look at each of the individuals and know what's that person saying, what's the biggest challenge that individual has interacting with the rest of the group, and balance those perspectives and suggest, and then say, look at how is that evidencing itself? Do I just work?
But that doesn't scale very much.
No, well, at a team level, it does, right? If you
Yeah,
say
but
that
that's
there's
saying a
someone,
lot, right? That's
right?
basically saying that your only way to organize a team or a company is for pizza-sized teams, and I don't buy that anymore.
I get that. And so I just like here's like so that's a what I'm saying is that whole defined role was a solution to a problem, right? And
Hmm.
so we're getting back to that problem. Let's
It
just talk
was a
about that's
crutch, Rick.
sure it's a crutch, and whatever solution you determine to replace it with today is a new crutch, and it doesn't matter because the point is the mindset. Like ideally, you want to get to that point where you've got blah 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 self
I think it's
organizing,
better. You know what a better
right?
analogy is from a crutch? It's an iron hip replacement.
Yeah, no, it's just a step along the process of evolution. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, let's go
Hey,
to
find something better, Rick. I'll
let's
adopt it.
let's just forget all that crap and just talk about this. You talked about there's a mindset issue, right? And I think if we're going to talk about process changes, right, which anything about like Scrum and all these things are really about how we work together and how we organize and what process we organize together with. That's a process view of the world. We should we should have the same diligence in suggesting changes we have with that we do with our technology, with our let's take on a new line of business, and then and actually and unfortunately I'll say the problem is that we tend to do that, and a lot of businesses don't have diligence on those other things, so they don't know how to bring it in. That's my little slag. But here's the thing: you
Well,
suggested,
I think there's negative
you
patterns in
suggested,
those places that enforce perhaps some bad actors to make
you
sure things don't
suggested.
happen.
Let's just pick on something random and specific by example.
Sure.
You suggested that I want to get away from something like pair programming because it doesn't work for people, and I
Some
want to.
people.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't work for some people.
Hmm.
Perfect. Now, usually there's someone who, or a group of people within the organization, within your team, like who will champion that change, right? So you need someone to keep you honest and say, okay, so what you're saying, let's bring this to a hypothesis. We believe that we're trying to, like pair programming is trying to accomplish something, right? We're doing it incorrectly, misguidedly, whatever, but there's the things that it's trying to accomplish.
No, I don't. I'm not saying it's done incorrectly.
Yeah, no, like whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? I don't care. You want to replace it, so you want to make a
Well,
hypothesis.
I,
I
I
can
don't
do.
want.
I
I don't want to
I
replace
can
it.
do.
I don't want people that don't like to do it to be forced to do it. Let's just be clear
Oh,
about what my
okay,
goal is.
all right. So my goal is I want people who don't like to pair program, right, to not be forced to do it.
Hmm.
Okay. So then I'm saying, so pair programming is a solution to a problem, right? And the question is that problem real or does it exist, right? Like if and it's like, we're trying to mentor, we're trying to have not giant meeting collaborations, but just get two people together and say if they can agree, if you can explain it to this person, there's things that it's trying to do. So what is your team in its best when pair programming is done well and done right? Forget in its best situation, what is it accomplishing, right? And is that a measurable outcome? Can you say that? What are the indicators when that's not happening and not working? What are the warning signs? Like,
So
if you can say, let's
I'll.
be evidence based.
Are you asking me or are you just talking?
I'm going to ask you, what is
Okay.
when it's working well, I'll see this evidence, and when it's not working well, I'll see that evidence. Can you tell me that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So
Right.
like pair programming means that I've done something without gold plating. So my task that I had, even if it's a Jira ticket, an old system, didn't take me a week. It took me 2 days because I had a pair with me saying, okay, we do ping pong development. You write unit test, I'll write the implementation, and then we switch. And that way we only do the next incremental thing that's the simplest thing that would make all the tests pass at all the times, right? And we do some refactoring in the middle, in between each step. That's one. Another number two is I need to understand how the system works. So I'll be paired with someone that can, as we're doing these tasks, they can talk to me and give me the backstory on the whole thing and kind of learn, right? So, any others, Rick, that I'm missing? There's a bunch of
That's it.
goals of TDD, right? But those are the
I
two
think-
main
okay,
ones
let's
that I
just
can
take
use as an
two.
example,
So
right? I don't want to.
basically, so they're not gold plating. I'll basically say the implementation is just enough
Yeah,
to get it done well. So it's
Yeah.
sufficient.
yeah,
right?
because the arguments for that is that every 100 lines of code there's a bug, so therefore if we don't gold plate or add unnecessary complexity or make it too large, then we reduce the number of defects. Got it. Yeah,
So-
exactly. So event modeling takes care of that by having a very clear scope for each state transition. So there's no really the idea that you need to look at a lot of context to do what you're doing is
Yeah, actually-
removed. Not only that, but you can really
one
zoom
thing.
out and look at the entire event model if you want and see how the overall process works and where your piece plays part and where the information that you get comes from and where the information that you leave behind goes to if you want. Right, so that's number one. Number two is that learning piece. Well, obviously, that's also the fact that now I'm looking at a blueprint. I'm not asking the builders how the house works. I'm looking at a blueprint of the house. So therefore, that communication is done in an asynchronous manner on a need-to-know basis. I don't need to engage with someone to get that information out. So that's where, is that a good synopsis of here's what TDD is supposed to do? Here's why we don't do it, because we get the same benefits and then some from an event model.
Well, TDD and pair programming are different things, right? So I'm not going to bring. Let's stick with pair programming. just
So
'cause-
take one of them, like learning. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
so-
Talking to
so-
someone, sure.
So pair programming gets us to like.
They're
hey, let's
synonymous,
see
though.
how-
I mean, you don't have pairing really without TDD, at least not in the agile circles I'm in.
Well, whatever. They are different things.
They are, I know, but they're
We'll do
attached.
pairing without TDD and
Yeah.
without official TDD and extreme. They just do
Sure.
just not test, right? And they
Mhm.
don't call it TDD. They just it comes with tests. And do they test first or test after? Doesn't matter. It comes with sufficient tests. Like,
Mhm.
Do you care? It's a black box, right?
Mhm.
If they did test before or after and they did it, like, do you have to force them? Like, literally, so basically, if we take three things, and one we missed when we talk, that's kind of important for pair programming, and I don't know, is when you talked about sufficient, just as sufficient, get it done well. So there's this, we don't overgo play, we don't get sidetracked. We just do the thing we needed and nothing else, and we do it well, because basically we both agree that that's sufficient, tested, implemented. There's a shared understanding of how the system works because we've had to explain it to somebody.
Yep.
So if the code's not self-explanatory and it needs a note, like we can't even like okay, we better put a note here because no one else is going to understand that. So that's the one
Yep.
note they put in, right? Like, is it commented well enough for someone else to pick it up?
Ugh, don't get
Have
me
that
started on
correlate.
comments. Anyway, go on.
It doesn't matter if it needs a comment.
It's
Then
another
that-
episode.
that-
We're going to
if it
argue
needs
about
their
code
architecture,
comments.
they
Good God.
just do that. They do what's necessary, right? They
Yeah.
have a conversation. What's necessary testing? But more important, there's a third thing that proponents of pair programming have, which is really that transfer of knowledge and mentoring, right?
hmm
And that's very, again, loose. And they're saying, like, it just might be on, like, when you pair with somebody, like, you might pair with somebody who's, like, just knows how to, like, all the tricks of the IDE and refactoring. And it's like, holy crap, wow, I've been, like, clickety clacky, cut and pasting, and you just, like, click refactor it. I just never, like, oh my goodness, that's how you use that thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you
oh,
learn.
yeah.
You
I'm
learn
saying
stuff.
that we don't, like, we
So
have a
what I'm saying is-
policy to you can't pair program because
Right.
it's less efficient because we have a fixed cost. It's like you can do whatever you want
So what
as
what I'm
long
saying
as when you finish that piece, you're getting paid for it. So if you
Perfect.
can learn from someone so that you get your piece done in half the time, well, you're gonna have an increase in pay, aren't you?
So what I'm saying is, in your environment, right, that third thing is not a primary goal, right? Because these people, if they want to take longer and not be as efficient, that's not your that's their responsibility.
That's correct. I'm not going to push someone, you must be the best programmer in the world. It's like, if you want to be an okay programmer, you have a spot here. And, your slices you can only do 2 a week, and everyone else is doing 3 or 4 a week. But you're comfortable, and you're not stressed, and this is,
Right.
and you know what? I know what your velocity is. And so I might need two of you to get the same thing done, but that's okay. More people in the office, fun, right? It's
Yeah.
okay.
So many organizations are realizing they can't compete that way to like there's not enough like one of their things when you get to is actually career growth, right?
Hmm.
And providing opportunities for peer mentorship. And they'll pay the money, right, to have experienced people take some portion of their time. They don't have to be people managers. They don't have to be this technical person. I don't want you to have to be a people manager. I don't have to, but like, can you find a way? And one of the ways is pair. Can you pair with some of these intermediate junior people so that like you can just do the work with them? You don't have to give them lessons, whatever. Just
Well, you're
show
giving
them
them
how.
the idea is that you're creating a work environment where you feel supported when someone needs
Right,
support, and that they get the help that they need, so that they're not,
right.
on their own struggling for a year making no progress.
So
And I
if
think
I
we do that. I think we do have the engagement, like the opportunity to engage at any
yeah,
point with
so,
people of all sorts of experience. So it could be two
so
junior
I
people just commiserating and having a fun time discovering the ins and outs of React. Fine.
so I'll
Or
ask
it can be someone senior that answers a couple of questions in the chat, or during uh, during a demo or something that we're doing.
and I mean, this is the challenge, and everybody is different stages of their career. You're going to choose the environment that's right for you, right? And choose how you work and how you learn, right?
Hmm.
So, but I've worked, both for companies and done external consulting. I've also worked for places that, where I was coding and we as an organization did contract coding, right? Basically, we just did coding for other companies and build it, right?
Hmm.
Now, it's not the same structure as the organization, but the business model is the same. And so when I hit a point where I had to I had a problem like okay, this is a one person job, so you can go do this on your own. I hit this problem. There's two or three people in the building that have expertise that if I went and talked with them and they had any inkling or engagement and
Hmm.
actually cared, right, and just were willing to participate, pair with me, have a really discussion, anything, right? If they were reinforced to do that, I could sit with them and we would have a better output for the company and
Yeah.
bill better and everything else, right? But the organization was such that you could have a 5 minute chat with somebody,
Hmm.
and interrupt them from their work, right? But they billed by the hour, right?
Hmm.
And literally after about 5 minutes, go, do you have a charge code for this, right? Because I like to bill my time, right? Like I have to bill my time now to something.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh, I don't. So then I had to go, literally at this point, I had to personally, as a developer, go talk to the project manager person to get approval to do a charge code, right? Now their competitive advantage was the skill of their play, but they realized they had a culture, and that's where I'm saying this transfer of knowledge. They had a culture which penalized, right, this person who had to ask for help.
Oh, of course. I mean, they put a
Merit
whole bunch of roadblocks
could
in
have,
their way.
basically,
Hmm.
it was better for my career to go secretly off the side
So
and spend
no
my
one can
own
find you.
time studying and learning and doing some other
Yeah.
stuff on something that person could have mentored me on, and our entire company would have been gobs better, and we would have like, you know what I mean, like taken on that project and the next project.
Yeah,
And
but you bring in another good, interesting point,
so
Rick, is
so
that
what
it's
I'm
not
asking,
just TD, it's not just pair programming, it's just being
right,
able to ask a question.
right. So what I'm asking you is, like, if I say this hypothesis, and this is where I want to get this, like, me as at that time, somebody who wasn't confident and didn't like, there was some parts of my skills that need to be worked out, and being a technical person, you're always embarrassed about that, right? Not always, but some people are, right? And you're just like, oh, and then, like, I don't want to be called out in front of management because I don't know this technical bit, right? And like,
Hmm.
they had to pay to
Well,
help me, like,
this is
even though I'm a senior developer, right? Because I don't know.
this is not Hunger Games or Animal Farm or any of those things. This is more like game theory, and
Right. So
which is
let's
funny because when you paint it like this, there's this air of like, oh, I don't care how you do your slice. It's very libertarian, like you are your own boss of how you work, and for better or worse, you'll either fly or you'll sink or swim. That's not actually how it's working out. It's
okay.
working out that everyone understands that if there are people that are weaker on the team, that there are ways that the whole solution comes together anyway. in terms of even gathering requirements, etc., that I've actually seen a lot more help in this environment, which is opposite of what I thought was going to happen. And we just have this, people would weed themselves out because they're not productive. It's like, no, people stuck around, people helped the others, because humans are generally good, and it's proving my point that people are generally
So
good
I
people.
think what I'm going to say, rather than micromanage and control this, I'm going to change that process to this process, right? This I just want to come back to our conversation. Let's assume that those three things are actually important requirements in your business, and in your head you've kind of got the other one you didn't mention about this transfer of knowledge and mentoring happens.
I
And you
can
might,
mention it. Do you want me to answer that right now?
right? So what I'm saying is, I just want to get back to, you can answer this, but I just want to get back to the point. Is if you want to process this change, let's say these are my criteria, that I want to do some observations, and I want to see evidence that these things are happening and not getting worse, right? Like this mentoring, transfer of knowledge is things, the work is doing to sufficient.
Yeah.
There's shared understanding.
So
Those are my three key criteria,
Okay, so
right?
I'm going to write them down because I'm getting lost with everything you're saying. I want to address each one, but like
So
I need to
so
write down points. So transfer of
okay.
knowledge, yes.
So there's transfer
One.
of knowledge
Just give
and
me some
mentoring.
bullet points that I can talk to and tell you
Transfer
exactly
of
how.
knowledge and mentoring, right? That's kind of that type of transfer of knowledge, right?
Mentoring, yeah.
There's
Anything
su-
else?
sufficient, like not gold plating, so sufficient just to get it done well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like, and then there is a shared, it results with a shared understanding of how the system works. Those are your three criteria.
Well, yeah, okay. The first two are kind of related, right? Transfer of
Yeah,
knowledge and mentoring. I see them as two separate
yeah,
things. You
transfer
could
of
have.
knowledge and mentoring. I'm just going to put that. That's a bag
No,
of stuff.
no, yeah, that's fine. I get it. And then sorry, the last one was
And there's basically a
just
shared
enough, right?
understanding of how the system works, right?
Oh,
So
shared.
now
Okay, so there's more knowledge, but that's
it's a
a
different type
complete
of knowledge,
the
right?
understanding of the complete system or
Right.
the goal of the system.
The shared understanding of the goal of the system and how it works,
All
right?
right.
So those three aspects, and they're a bag of stuff, and they're not very well worded. But let's say what I'm saying is the mechanism. I'm going to say, like, let's take the diligence. I have a hypothesis that not everybody needs to go pair. We've been getting success in getting all these three things done well enough, or some level, right? I can tell you how well I feel those are going by these indicators, right?
Yeah. What are
How's it
your
going?
indicators?
Right? By whatever your indicators are, I'm going to ask you, you're going to say, here's my indicators that those are going well, and here's my warning signs that they're not, right? If you just wrote those down, this is John, and I don't care, like, this is how I'm going to analyze the system as it is today. How well is that going now? And then I'm going to say, I am going to give you the option of either doing peer mentoring or something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to watch, and I'm going to look at these indicators and see if they get better or worse, right? And I'm not going to micromanage how you do those things. And then if they're not getting worse, I'm not going to attack you for doing it. I'm saying, hey guys, I'm seeing these problems. Maybe we need to make an adjustment. So maybe my experiment didn't fully get out, right? Like, it's so that procedure of making the hypothesis, being evidence-based on what's important about that change and what you don't want to lose and what you do want to gain, right?
Yeah, we got 10 minutes, so I have very little time to answer.
So that's really what I want to say. And then basically you have a new criteria, which is, I think these people, I will keep all of those things, and I think these type of people will be better engaged and more successful. So I have my experiment is a success when all those things are still happening well enough, or maybe even better, and these people are more engaged, right? That's it. Then my experiment was a success.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
engagement. I mean, there's people need to make money to put food on the table, so they need to be engaged to get work done, pull the next thing down to work on it. Right? So engagement's not a problem with us. People are getting engaged in the system because it's contracting. Like there's no, if you don't do the work, there's nothing for me to pay for you. We've removed that by the hour thing where someone's sitting there pretending to work and they're not actually doing anything. That's gone. That's not an issue at all. So transfer of knowledge. Because we have these very tiny amounts of patterns, right? We have the 4 core patterns. Really, it's implementing over and over again command handlers and event handlers. So the knowledge of like how our system works is incredibly low. Like it's very low fidelity. So it's really fast for someone to get that knowledge, and it's not a stumbling block compared to trying to educate someone on a legacy system like I had at PayByPhone, where you had a crap load of tables that were somehow related, a 5,000 line method that took care of the parking transaction in special ways with special cities. And yeah, there's your mentorship. But we have zero of those types of methods. We have an additive only architecture because it's event sourced in a way that really supports, multiple models. So there's no blow up of giant pools of tables that have coupling with, high coupling with a lot of other places. I just want to get through all that. So the mentoring, the mentoring actually, what happens? I want to tell you what happens in our organization, and then you can ask me questions and see how I would measure them. So the mentoring is really, here is, how I did my previous slice. This is a command handler from the screen that you're working on as well. This other button should work pretty much the same way. On the event model, here is all the given when-thens, or if there's none, you can kind of implicitly see that it's just storing this information for now, and you pass off control to this next screen. That's the level of mentoring that we have. There may be something like how do you do merges? Well, the merges are pretty simple. The conflicts that you should have are really about what someone thought the event should look like on this side versus what someone else thought the event should look like on here. But really, you're both going to the event model to see the structure of that event, and therefore your merge conflict resolution is going to be trivial, because your source of truth is not what the diff is in source control. The source of truth is like, what does the event model show? And then either side can take care of that conflict. It's not a big deal. So in terms of mentoring, what the day-to-day is and all that, that's never been simpler in any of my experience than with this. And then gold plating. Well, there is the opposite push that because we were fixing costs, that someone might want to actually stop early because they can charge for another slice and grab another one, but they're on the hook for the previous one always working, right? They're guarantee for free that those will work. So everyone has been, it's the right carrots and sticks. They were beaten by the stick of having to go improve their own work if they went too fast. And so it's this thing that keeps an equilibrium between going quickly and going responsibly, which is what is the true motivator for doing just enough. If someone wants to gold plate, let's just say someone does gold plate. What's the risk? We've removed the risk because that's still in a slice. And if something does have extra code that perhaps is adding risk to the solution, I can say that maybe that person even quit. The idea is that we have an ability to replace that particular command handler or set of read models, set of event handlers for a read model by re-implementing. Saying, oh, that was really bad. That doesn't happen with the traditional places that I worked at, because the coupling was so horrible that you couldn't just carte blanche replace a component of the workflow. And here we can every single time for every single state transition or state view. So that's number two. Let me just get through all of it, and then we can.
That's a measurement of risk of the state. That's not really one of our criteria.
It's not, but it's related. It impacts. I'm trying to explain to you how it works. You can draw whatever you want to measure on that. You can have like, how many bugs do you have? Could be a measure. That's kind of an empirical way to measure this, maybe. But it's up to you. And shared goal of the system, obviously. It's, looking at overall, what is this person looking at in this time tracking application? Okay, I get it. They're tracking their time. They get to invoice correctly and they get paid correctly. And, maybe I can have this time entry, user flow here, or use case flow, or whatever you want to call it. This part of the workflow is called time entry. So I'm getting how what the shared goal of the organization is, and I can pin it through to, actual stats of like if every time that I do an invoice, there's like a 0.1% charge for the benefit of using the system. I can show the monetization. I can translate the working of the system to the bottom line of how the company makes revenue and pays for all the effort. So, the shared goal of the system, so, like that's the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm sure there's other aspects of this, such as information completeness. I can see how far my piece of information goes through the system. I can see which pieces it touches, so I have a better understanding of, what portion my current piece of work is responsible for with respect to the overall goal, which hopefully is expressed on an event model. So this is, and from TDD, I kind of had artificial blinders on those things, and I didn't work with this way. I had this idea of everything was kind of like a little science experiment. I could do failing tests, make them pass, and I could do, and that gave me an opportunity to do pair programming, where I could talk to someone that would give me some insights and show me some cool IDE tricks. I have that motivation to do cool IDE tricks because that means I'll get, 4 slices done in a week rather than 2. So that's about it.
I mean, you have a motivation to do ID tricks, but like if you don't actually work with someone who knows them, where are you going to learn them, right?
Well, you're gonna be highly incentivized to ask, look on YouTube, etc. And the last part, I think, is that this is kind of a unhealthy competition that everyone's going to just keep grabbing slices and push people out of the way so that they can get more before they get to it. That's not true, because in the end, at demo time, what the customer gets affects everyone. So they don't want to be part of a bad team, because that means fewer slices and a shorter project anyway. So it's game theory. It's actually turning out to be the best example of game theory and the good nature of people, at least in our organization, where everyone doesn't need to have a policy at the company of how you're supposed to mentor or pair. It happens naturally because they want to be part of the best team. They want to have the best architecture, the highest scaling, the most rapid application development that they can, the fastest rapid application development they could possibly muster. They want all those things so badly, and they're given the freedom to implement it in whatever way they want, because the only thing I'm measuring is, do the clients see these screens in this order, and does the system capture this implementation, these pieces of information? That's all I care about. And that middle part sorts itself out incredibly well. You have smart people and motivated people, trust them. This is what's allowing trust to happen. And so if you need mentoring, it'll happen. If you need, just enough, there's a disincentive that's baked in for them spending any more time on this from multiple areas.
So I guess that's the thing is, and what I'm trying to point out here is not that you have thought that through stuff, but the diligence to keep yourself honest about that. And I'm just going to pick one just because it's random.
Sure.
But okay.
We got like 2 minutes.
You have this statement. You say, if you need mentoring, it'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what I'm saying, what's your evidence that it's actually happened?
I've seen mentoring.
You've seen some mentoring. Now the question is, what would be your indicator when it's not happening? You've seen it happen for some people. Great, it happened once or twice. But I'll give you a hypothesis. I hypothesize that some of the junior people who leave where you're working, I'm going to make the hypothesis, which is just like a null hypothesis, that they're leaving because they can get better mentoring for their own career growth elsewhere. Now, and that's just to be argument, to just, if you take that, you can actually say, okay, well, how would I know that's not true?
Well, I haven't had anyone leave yet.
Okay. So you don't know.
So it's like if that's going to be 1% of the time, is it a significantly, like, that's way better than any other place that I've worked at ever before. So if they were, either they have it wrong, they didn't like me, or they didn't like someone else on the other team, and it just wasn't a good fit, and this was an excuse that I'm going to learn something somewhere else. But so far we haven't had anyone leave. It's been a one-way street that we're only limited by the amount of work that's given to us, and companies that actually want to tried this crazy experiment, which is turning out to be an amazing way of working. So so far, maybe there'll be other things, as this becomes more, we have more samples of this being done properly, like, within our organization, that I'll have better numbers of where we can improve, right? We've improved, well, let me just say, I mean, we haven't changed. I mean, it's not like we came up with this thing 1 year and then we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. We've changed. Like, for example, we add, 2 UI rewrites within each slice and bake that into the price. We've changed the fact that we don't need to event model the whole thing. We can use a slice as a form of currency instead, when there is that agile aspect for companies that are not ready with all the requirements, and they need to sort of make it up as they go along because they don't know, and they need to have the fastest way to put something out and experiment and have a demo of a concept, and that's the only way they can work. So we've adapted to that, so we're not going to force someone to complete an entire end-to-end event model before we start. We'd like it to be as far as it can go, but we understand there's pressures and there's just lack of information sometimes that they need to, build that as we go. And that ended up being fine. We ended up having ways of working. They also needed help from other areas, like, just because we're doing this, we can also help in integrations and all these other things. So that didn't work on a fixed cost basis because they're open-ended pieces of work. So we add a statement of work for time and materials alongside a statement of work for all of the slice work. So that's another
There's
improvement that
nothing-
we had.
I'm gonna leave you with a statement here because we're almost out of time. You said, right?
Yeah, Einar is gonna chime in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, your process that you're describing, like, fits entirely within the principles of agile.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing unagile about what you're doing.
course.
There's nothing in the agile manifesto that says don't work like that. In fact, you've listed off several principles that fit entirely within
Yeah.
the principles. Like, your highest priority is to satisfy the customer through continuous delivery of valuable software.
That's right. Yeah.
You're building projects around motivated individuals, giving them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done.
Yep.
So on and so forth. So my confusion with this, like, we don't do agile in the listing of agile principles. Like, that confuses me a bit.
Yeah, so let me clarify that, because I think what happens that Agile has, especially the manifesto, people over process and things like that. That was very unhealthy. I know what the intent is. It's very healthy, but it threw away the other side, because there's an opinion from a high place of authority to say one is better than the other, but both are still important. That doesn't matter that they say that both are still important. The second one gets flushed down the toilet. That's the problem. So you can't phrase it. The problem with Agile is the manifesto.
The problem with the problem with Agile might also be that you don't read beyond the manifesto. So have you ever, and I'm actually going to be honest, I'm actually asking this question,
Sure.
not being sarcastic.
No.
Have you ever read the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So forget.
I was a huge Agile proponent, remember? Like,
So-
I was
so-
part of
so-
Agile Vancouver, and we put on conferences. Like,
Right.
I'm not an
so what I-
anti-Agile person. I just
Right.
don't like what it's become, or how it's taught, or what patterns it formed in the industry.
Right.
That's all.
And I think this is where you're creating confusion.
Good.
Your own intent, like your own understanding, and people, like people hear your words, right, and then look at you like you don't understand. Like you're like, check that. You're basically saying event modeling is the new agile, right? Event
Sort
modeling,
of,
we're talking about,
sometimes.
we don't do agile.
Mhm.
This is what it sounds like you're saying. It's like we don't do agile, right?
No.
Agile's wrong and it's crap and it's garbage.
Correct.
Instead, it's event modeling, and you
Yes.
basically reword
Mhm.
the agile
I stole it,
12
Rick.
principles, right? And then you say, and see, we're not doing agile. We're just following the 12 principles that I just like. Wait a minute.
Mhm.
So it's distracting,
Good.
and no, not good.
I'll tell you why it's good. Because it makes people think.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you why it's not good, because you don't get it, right? I have had people reject event modeling because they've heard you talk.
Yep.
and they say, no, we want our highest value. These are our principles.
Mm-hmm.
And he's selling this tool, and this is how you have to work. And he's telling we don't do agile because we don't believe in that stuff. Just code and just follow event modeling and event storming, and just do event modeling and implement it with event sourcing and CQRS.
Mm-hmm.
And don't worry about that. That's not important. We don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the words you're saying to those people. And sure, maybe if they experience an event modeling session and actually follow through and do work with people who actually get it,
Mm-hmm.
they'll get it. But from the statements you say,
Mm-hmm.
they're not even going to show up.
Yeah, that's fine. I know,
That's
and
my
that's why you know why it's fine, because I don't want to be the only person that talks about event modeling, and they'll come across someone like yourself or someone else that they will listen to, and that's okay. I need to be someone that pushes the boundaries and says controversial things to draw attention, even though it's negative in a lot of ways. And I need, before you joined, I actually talked about this point, that arguments need to happen so that ideas are explored.
Right.
And statements have to be made in the extreme to test the safe areas, because you have to push a boundary saying that we're not agile, yet we are. Maybe the only reason that we are agile is because our measuring stick for success is successful projects that don't gold plate that blah 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 whatever. Then yeah, we have the same thing. All we're saying is that agile is a better way to get there, or event modeling is a better way to get there. And I'm not going to say agile. Maybe we'll just say Scrum or something is a better way to get there, and that's all you need to know. And then don't worry about event modeling or anything like that. Just do Scrum. And I was saying, like, don't do Scrum, just do event modeling, and everything else will be fine, and you'll get no gold plating and blah blah blah. That's okay. So if people get their noses bent out of shape, they should really look internally and say, if I'm full of shit, then I shouldn't have a business long ago. I should be broke and on my ass, right? Because I'm not selling a product. There's no trademark on this. Anyone can do it. You don't have to work with me to do event modeling. You can even do a quasi version of it. You can steal, like you were saying, maybe just do it for the technical part. Maybe just you want to have your technical team talk about their event sourcing solution that no one knows on the product side about, and just use the these things. That's fine. That's good. I think it's okay. I think agile proponents at the very beginning, where maybe they're not as in your face and direct as me, but they were kind of like sticking the middle finger up to the people that said you need UML and a big design up front for a whole year before you can do a proper project. They were just saying it in a nice way, but essentially said, thank you, but no thank you. That way is wrong, and you're out of your tree if you're trying to do it. It's just, how you deliver that message. And I'm not the best person. Like I said, people peg me as an extrovert at the very beginning. I'm not. I'm an introvert. And maybe that's why I'm argumentative, and maybe that's why I don't know how to speak to people properly. Maybe that's why I'm, uncomfortable when people introduce me to a circle of strangers. I smile and shake hands and talk. Internally, it's a high stress situation for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is for all of us, right? I mean, we've kind of been, for me too, like I will have this debate with you because we've created an environment where it's actually safe for us to have this level of pushback.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm listening to us, Rick, this is one of the best things we could do. Is you say, hey, Adam, you're an asshole for doing like this, and I can say, okay.
I'm usually not comfortable pushing somebody like this in a public forum. Like, I really don't like it, because I figure it creates a negativity that lasts, right? We've created an environment where it's kind of a bit safe to do that, and so I'm okay. But so here's the concern, right? Mm-hmm. And that is, you say, I do this to push the boundaries, to evolve the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. The
counterpoint to that is, and some people have come out and said it to me, and they're kind of, they don't want to say it to you because, they like, and which is not fair to them. They should talk to you privately and talk. But here's the thing. The conversation from the words you're saying about agile hasn't evolved, hasn't shifted. It's the same words you said. Like, we talk about this and yeah, but I'm doing this. I need to be controversial. It's not evolving. It's not moving forward. That's the symptom that they're seeing. is maybe they feel that I think you get it, but you're playing the
What's not
tutor
evolving? Event modeling's not evolving?
no, your conversation about agile
Oh,
event
yeah. I
modeling
mean,
is a replace for agile.
to tell you
And
honestly, Rick, that the reason
it's
that
a
we bring
distraction.
Agile in is probably because you're here quite a lot. I mean, I do mention it here and there, but
Yeah.
we certainly do uncover a lot of these things about it.
Yeah.
And the reason I keep arguing about it is because I see a lot of failure in the industry. So I am pissed off about it, and it hasn't changed. And that's a problem. It actually hasn't changed from the other side either, right?
Yeah.
So
I think if you kind of shifted your words a little bit, right? There are people that really want to engage with your discussion that are being felt that
I won't allow them to talk,
dismissing.
or they can't express themselves in front of me. I
No,
don't
they
know.
feel that you're actually dismissing them and their concept and their idea. Yeah, but that doesn't matter because I want to be controversial. So yeah. You're pushing them down. Your perspective is not relevant, and that's what I'm saying is there's this shift.
But aren't we discussing these things quite openly right here, where you're talking probably more than I am?
I get it, and that's why I'm pushing you this publicly. Because
I don't. So
think-
I like every time some people have told me, it's like, well, I don't have an opportunity to discuss it, or like you can't argue with Adam because he's gonna just tell you that you're wrong. It's like, no, I'm here to give you a platform to talk about those things right here, and we can argue those things
and I
with
get it, and
enough
that's why-
time for both sides to talk. So
That's why I'm pushing you so publicly here because I think
that's
people
fine.
felt
That's
that.
what I'm here for.
I
If I
want
didn't want to
to-
be pushed publicly, I wouldn't have a meetup.
So what I'm actually maybe the specific thing I'm asking you to do is when the conversation pushback comes like to strictly acknowledge and then not follow up with the dismissal. But yeah, I'm going to go continue doing that because I like to raise like maybe I'll shift my words because I do want to raise it, and maybe my words that I'm actually what they're saying, what sounds like what you're actually trying to say is people have these agile principles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're following these practices that don't follow through and meet those agile principles. So what it's not the agile principles; it's the blind Scrum implementations and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And I do say that there is like I don't think anyone can hold me to the point where I misrepresent what people are doing when they're doing Scrum. I mean, the reason that I'm saying things so boldly is because I'm not here throwing crap on someone else's ideas without having tried them myself. I was one of the biggest agile, TDD, all that stuff proponents in Vancouver, and pushing the rhetoric right from 2000, 2001, bringing all these agile folks in for the conferences into Vancouver. Mentoring, teaching, running workshops on these things at multiple places as a consultant, etc. So I'm not coming here crapping on people because it doesn't help event modeling or something. Like, absolutely not. It's coming from a point of like, yeah, you deserve criticism, and the default is agile out there. It is the hammer for all the nails. It is the silver bullet. And
that word
that's why I'm like, it needs equal push the other way. And so, yeah, I'm not the perfect person. I am ideally, like internally, realistically, I am an introvert. And maybe it's coming out as aggressive or something else, or someone that doesn't have the social skills to do that. But I can work on it as much as I can. I have. But there's something about my personality that makes me who I am, and unless I get a lobotomy to change it, it's going to continue to be so. And there's a lot worse assholes out there for other things that I can show you that are way more successful.
And really, I think what you're arguing against is these agile implementations, right? And I think that's the problem is you throw this bag of word and people hear like the word agile is generic. Like some people hear agile and they don't think of Scrum they said those are all tools that you can use to help shift your agility when they fit your situation, right? So they say Scrum and all these things. They think those are tools that the agile community uses, lots of them ineffectively, which is different from the agile movement, right? And I think that's where people, and you're talking about use agile and scrum to you, the way you speak about it, they're interchangeable words. That's the challenge that people
That's fine.
get.
And
Right.
I'll clarify it. Like when you
Yeah.
press me on TDD and
Yeah.
pair programming, absolutely. You know what?
I
I'm
think
not gonna check every single vocabulary, and I misspeak quite a lot. If you
so. We
rewind,
all
rewind all of the recordings. Take note of when I misspeak, use the wrong words, regardless of agile.
we all do.
That's what we do when we're live and we're having discussions.
Yeah.
And so when people take things out of context and say that, oh, he's agile, but what he's really talking about is Scrum, but he's too lazy to, to make the clarification. Sorry, I mean, if you truly know me, you probably had a proper discussion with me in person for an hour or two over a coffee or a beer, where we can even draw diagrams on napkins and talk about the very intricacies of every single thing here, and you'll understand. So yeah, some of these things are, someone calls, my operating system Linux, and Stallman will say, no, that's GNU Linux. That's the correct way of saying it. So who the fuck cares? I don't care. I know that when I say agile, you know me enough that you understand that I'm picking on some Scrum practice. Okay?
Right.
And so that's fine. And we have these discussions publicly so that people can, get that backfilled and they can understand what we're meaning here. And I think we've been, I like the fact that you're here because it allows me to elaborate these things, and you can pose the hard questions or say, Adam, you make sure you say GNU Linux, not Linux, right? In the agile sense. So that's fine. You can do that.
Yeah. So
I'm not telling you, shut up, Rick. I'm speaking now, right?
yeah, I think people are like, there's been years, like honestly, when TDD first came out, there was a lot of people. It came, it's like now that you have TDD is the new agile. TDD replaces agile, right? And then it was like, specification by example replaces agile. DevOps replaces agile. It's like all of these like practices that
It's
work
GitOps
well,
now. It's not DevOps anymore.
and DevOps and this and like and now and there's another, like people are really tired because those words are symptoms of cargo cult mentality. And so what I'm saying is, it's you attract people
I'd argue the last part.
that are prone to cargo cult mentality, and you push away people that are resistant to it.
I'd
And
be
so what
careful
I'm
about
saying-
the last one, Rick. Honestly, I wouldn't, like I said before. I think saying cargo cult is dangerous in what you're saying. There's a big difference, like I said earlier, from someone trying to be as successful as Google, so they're gonna grab something from there. And there's a better way to say it. I think it's about people are looking for better ways, and they'll grab the next thing. It could be from a book or whatever. That's different than cargo culting. Those are two different things. And I don't want to confuse people by. Maybe
Well,
I'm
yeah,
wrong.
but I
Is it the same thing? I don't think it is. I think cargo culting is wanting the success of a larger company, usually, and you adopt it for your own smaller company so that you are able to grow and follow in the footsteps of that company through practices or tools or whatever. I think what we're having here is this: what's the next hottest tech or approach, which is agnostic of where that tool came out of, right? Like, could you say which company Scrum came out of? Maybe. Certainly can look at the Spotify method. It came from Spotify, right? And Valve had their playbook, and GitHub had theirs for flat org structure.
Cargo culting is much more about just following the procedures
Mm-hmm.
without the understanding the depth of what those procedures are trying to accomplish and the background behind them and the other work that goes with those procedures.
That's correct.
So you're just implementing them superficially, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're following the
process.
Practices, and you think you're going to get the benefits without understanding what
That's
it's
where
doing.
I talked about earlier. Like if you don't have those business practices, where
Sorry, is it Einar? Are you trying to get a word in edgewise?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I thought I heard something in the back.
So fundamentally, that's the challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are really tired of we don't do agile, we do this, and this is just comes across like a procedure or a technique, right? And that is right. The people that get drawn to that statement.
Well,
Are
if
the
these
people
people
that
are
got
so
drawn to the
opinionated and they're so, why are they not here? Why do they need you to speak for them? Why are they so chicken? Like everyone's here. There's people that are strangers that I have this level of openness with. So in a sense, I really like. What did they do to go out of their way to prove how I don't allow them to talk? It's all
Well,
just
no,
hearsay.
no. What I'm saying,
So if
what I'm
someone is
telling
slandering my name or whatever, that's
what
their
I'm
problem,
telling
not
you,
mine.
what I'm telling you is, it's not about that they don't allow you to talk or come to this forum, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that they start honestly looking at, I want to do, like, I'm looking for tools to do this level, this communication, this information technology,
Mm-hmm.
this working with the business at that level.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a good tool. There's event modeling and event storming.
Mm-hmm.
And then they read some things about event modeling.
Mm-hmm.
They say, oh, this is just a technique. He's like pushing a tool, and it's really to push the procedures of, this is how you design your code and this is how you write your code. And if you just, like, implementation wise, it's like the new UML. It comes across to them like you're selling the new UML as a replacement for Agile.
It is. It's supposed to be. Yes, I'm not going to make an apology for that. In fact, I've changed the rhetoric to be more like event modeling language to do that, right?
It, like, I don't think you, like, the words you said earlier and your answer, yes, it's supposed to be. So this is the new UML that replaces Agile. That's what its purpose is?
Sort of. I mean, you have Yuri talking about BPMN again with a better DSL for it. That's fine. Maybe someone will make use of that.
Unfortunately, that's right. So
there's nothing wrong with Yuri doing a BPMN implementation with a nice DSL. That's his project, and he's putting a lot of energy into that. I'm not knocking it. He talks to me all the time about this stuff. He just doesn't use event modeling. That's cool.
So, and I think that's where there's something missing, right?
I can't be everything to everyone, and my choice is that if you're going to have an information system, I haven't found a better way to get that information across an organization faster. And unless I personally get convinced of something else, I won't change my tune because it's working for us. We're doing really well. There's larger and larger organizations that are adopting it, regardless of what I say. You think a large, giant bank gives a crap about what I say on YouTube? They don't. They do what will put an extra $1 million per month in their pockets. That's what they care about.
Yeah, and I think this is really about information architecture and how to effectively, quickly get the appropriate implementation architecture that works for the business and works for the implementation, and keep evolving it, right? Because we have a shared understanding of what it is today. Like, that's what it is, right? And you can do that in an agile fashion or not an agile fashion and still have success, right? That's the truth of the matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, if people are attached to Agile because they have that in their job description and they have like a resume of being a Scrum Master for the last 10 years, and then they come across me saying that Scrum's bad, they're not going to like me.
Okay, so you're listening. I'm talking about architects, developers, people like that who don't give a crap. Like, honestly, Agile or not doesn't affect the branding, doesn't affect them. They have the technical skills, they have the experience. That's the brand.
So are you talking about event sourcing, or are you talking about event modeling? Because there's different topics here.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm talking about event, because you're saying event modeling replaces Agile, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I think it's a better way to do Agile. I think our discussion kind of proved like that it's the same goals, right?
If you just change the words when you say it to event modeling provides a better way to do Agile instead of event modeling replaces Agile, now we're actually talking with the same mental model.
Sort of. I I'm not comfortable with that.
I'm not saying that's exactly the words.
No, I know,
you're-
but I want
getting
to,
closer to the
I want to make
model,
sure that I
right?
address what that implies, right?
I'm not
It's
sure that's the right way for you, but I'm just saying
yeah, I don't.
there's a difference, right? And that's a mental model clash that is very different. For
The
people who
the
get-
problem with agile is that it's too tied into so many different little, you know, some in some cases bad tooling or misappropriation of tooling, or cargo culting and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think when you tie it
So
to, you've got a problem. You missed the point. Anytime you
so
tie
I can't say that this is a better way of doing agile, and why I have to say that this is instead of agile, because if I say the former, I'm dragging in all those other things, and I'm not associated with those things, and so I can't say that I am doing agile better. I say that I arrive at the goals of agile through event modeling.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So
But
I
I can't-
absolutely agree with, like, I understand wanting to distance yourself from agile because it's become like an increasingly distracting and loaded term, and you know there's all sorts of
Exactly.
people who believe wrong things about
Yep.
what it even means, and there's these
It's
like
tainted.
a lot of companies
It's
want,
tainted.
yeah, absolutely. So I
For because
completely
people took
understand that.
advantage of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but my question is, like, why then bring up the term at all?
I
Yeah.
generally don't, and the reason I do is because it actually has a clash in organizations. Because there are people in organizations that have a specific way of working, and that's always tied to agile these ways. So these days, so it's sometimes the fact that there's stand-ups, and people that work with us hate stand-ups, and I'm not going to force people to be in stand-ups if they don't want to be, because they get the progress and other things through these, you know, transfer of knowledge and all the things we covered with Rick through doing event modeling properly. So that's one reason why it does come up, is because when we do go into organizations where we're doing event modeling, we have the people that are entrenched in those practices, for better or for worse. Some people are scrum masters doing things badly. Some people are true, capture the spirit of agile properly, and they're the good people, and that's fine. But there's I would say a very significant percentage, I would say even to half, where the adoption of event modeling is in direct competition to people's livelihoods through being people that do agile the wrong way, unfortunately. And so it is an actual
That's a huge industry.
yeah, it is. And you have certifications, and you have people that buy hook and sinker into SAFe and all these large agile frameworks, other things. So it would be dishonest, Rick, if it didn't come up, because it does come up. It comes up not just during the meetup, but it comes up in my day-to-day when I go to a company and say, well, how does that affect, how can we implement this when these are our processes right now? And they're like,
how can we get rid of Jira? Like,
yeah, exactly. How can you have Jira? One of the last places where I didn't, just to let me finish the thought, Rick. We're really over time, but I like the discussion. It's really good. You know, one of the last places where, you know, I kind of did event modeling, but I only did like 4 hours. I just noticed that they had a mountain of the requirements already in Jira. They had about, you know, 50 architectural diagrams explaining 50 different parts of the system. What were they going to gain by redoing all of that work in the middle of a project by putting it on an event model? Tell me. Nothing. And, you know, and so they want to take advantage of event modeling, but they can't. And they can't because of what they followed through agile, for better or worse, for whatever way it got presented to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, before I forget, this is why I want to pause here. You finally put in your own personal words a statement that really resonated with me about agile and event modeling. And I just want to, like, you listen back to the recording, and the last thing you say basically, I and people I know, but you didn't say it, I can do a better job, or I can't remember exactly how you worded it because it's been a little while and a lot has happened. I get the goals of agile, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you like, the goals of agile better by working this way. That is honest, true, and pure. The rest is distraction.
That's not even true. That's not even true, because
like,
I've made that concession for you because you understand what the goals of Agile are. The true way of saying this is I can implement a project more successfully by using this approach than any other approach, including what some of the Agile practices are.
some of the Agile practice, and that's the problem. So I think,
Unfortunately, that's a big problem.
here's the thing that there are people.
Well, invite him here, for God's sakes.
No, there are people.
We can have a proper talk, and I think it'll be better once we're in person, Rick, because online everyone's a tough guy, and people have a less likelihood to be honest with one another. But when you and I are having a beer talking about this, it's a much different experience.
It is, and I think the thing is, what I want you to there are people that have been pushing back against, like, they finally convinced. This is the challenge where people become solution blind, right? With Scrum or whatever, is the reason they originally picked Scrum or whatever, Safe or some,
whatever. Jira-itis,
they
Git
looked
flow,
at where
whatever.
they were. They looked at where they were.
Yeah.
They looked at the goals of Agile, and they say, based on where we want to be, we're not going to get where we want to be, and unless we embrace some of those goals. And then they basically, unfortunately, took and say, well, what's a technique? And the technique took over, right? And they lost sight of the goals of Agile, and that's what they're frustrated. So, okay, then we're going to replace. We did Scrum. Well, that didn't work. It doesn't scale. Well, we'll do Safe. Well, that didn't work. Okay, well, we need Spotify model. Well, that didn't work.
Plus, the people change at the organization, so something that was introduced by one person was inherited by, whoever got the job next, or there's just 2 years of turnaround time in most companies, right?
Right. So if you just basically said, here are the goals of Agile, if you want to talk about fundamentally these goals of Agile, we are better achieved with these set of practices than other, like.
Yeah, and that's part. There's a big part.
That's the message that resonates, and that's the message that now gives me.
Yeah, of course.
When I go into an organization where there's senior people, technical, not just business people who are like HR or whatever.
Well, just send them the recording of this, for God's sakes.
That want those goals of Agile. If you can actually say, here are maybe not the 12 goals, the primary goals of Agile, that this satisfies better than other techniques, or if you're going to do other techniques, if you're not doing this, those other techniques are kind of blind to this. So you can do those if you want. It doesn't matter. If you do this, those other techniques can either be replaced or have a chance of success.
Yeah,
that's the key thing is you can do Scrum and this.
So
right?
what I want to say, Rick, is that a big chunk of the book, like an entire chapter or probably more, is really about translating established practices within the industry. It doesn't have to be Agile. It can be other things, like even on the architectural side, onion architecture, ports and adapters, blah, 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 all these different things, 3-layer cake. There is a chapter, because event modeling is new, not many people know about it, that you need to have a map of, like, this is what we used to do, and this is how the goals of those things are addressed by this thing. And there's a whole thing. So I'm very aware of this, because to do business, I have to address what you're talking about. And maybe I take it for granted because I swim in it every day, that my statements are sweeping and controversial and absolutist and all that kind of stuff. But it comes from the fact that I'm battling this every single day with every single new client, right?
We all are. That's the thing, is we all are.
But not from, well, I'm saying for the purpose of event modeling. I don't know, if you're doing event modeling or wanting to do event modeling, you're doing the same kind of thing, and maybe you are at a disadvantage because you haven't done it for as long as I have, or at such a consistent basis of every single time I'm dealing with a client, it's really working through these difficult transitions of changing an organization to use one approach versus another. Those are not easy things. To pivot an organization to work a different way is subject to who you get there, the established culture. It's a number. It's like fighting 500 enemies at the same time to get through a battle, and I don't like to call it a battle, but it sort of is, because there has to be, you know, things that are like battles of proof. Like, can you prove that this does that? And it doesn't matter what they read, it doesn't matter what they see. They still want to ask you, the person that's going to be implementing X, whether that's event modeling or agile or whatever, to say, how is this, you know, how is this going to work out for me every day? And a lot of times those arguments are unwinnable, and it's really about testing those waters, because some people just don't want their cheese moved, and the organization can say, we want to do some things better, but and we think we have a good idea of what people want, but really what we have is a some people that are not going to be wanting to change something, and they know. And you know, sometimes it might be, you know, Alberto talked about dungeon masters and all that, and they've been there for 20 years, and this is just another little storm that'll blow over in, you know, 3 months, if they silently rebel by saying that yes, they'll participate, but they don't lift a finger, right? So yeah,
I think there's some people that, like, and I guess maybe the dungeon master is a good thing, because there's a visceral fear that some people have, where they're just going to get a new dungeon master, which is like, this is the way we have to do everything. We have to roll track, and that fear instantly, some people just push it away and they won't dig deeper. And
of course, but they'll do that to anything.
Right? No, but it's basically what I'm saying is those statements trigger that fear, and whereas I think I'm glad that you're addressing that. When you switch it to, but let's talk about the goals of Agile, right? And how I can measure. The moment you say, I'm going to say goals of Agile, and now you're saying, I have evidence-based, how well are you meeting the goals of Agile? Forget your process. I don't want to talk about how you work with Scrum or whatever. And then let's talk about how this, right? Because those goals, do we agree those goals are important? Because if they don't agree those goals are important, you're kind of screwed, right? So you don't have to all the goals of Agile, but the goals that actually resonate with you, these are the primary goals. And if you agree those goals overlap with some of your core values, Agile or not, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Agile doesn't set out to fail. I mean, it has the same goals. I mean, it's successful because it helped companies be better than they used to be. No different than event modeling does.
And I think that the people that take any kind of agility and adopt and evolve their practice, I'll try that one out, experiment with it. Wait a minute, it doesn't work for me, but I ran it as an experiment, instead of we had a meeting and everybody agreed, so now we're stuck with it, right? Until it blows up and we can have another meeting, and just, all right, that's the challenge. And that's where it's like, if we get goal-based and we say, how are we doing on those goals? And if we took this experiment and we actually said, we're going to run this little project this way, and we're going to measure, does it better suit those goals for us? And then suddenly it's just practice, it's evidence-based, it's honest. And so that's really the quicker we can get to what are the goals, which of the goals.
Well, you know, there's going to, so
satisfied better.
It's not going to be me, because I, you know, and just like with the first folks that had to break ground in adopting something like TDD or test first or whatever, or other agile practices or quote unquote agile practices. I don't want to misuse the term again, but they didn't make friends, right? And we're doing the same thing here. And so I've seen it with agile, how you don't make friends by changing things. And maybe that's why I just throw caution to the wind when I phrase things a certain way. And I'm sorry that that's the way it is. But in the end, it's going to be the people that look past that. It's going to be the large banks. It's going to be the institutions that are well respected, that are going to adopt it regardless of who put it out there. Don't kill the messenger. You don't like me, that's fine. Here's something that you can use. That's okay. And it's going to come down to actual testimonials and other people doing this. You know, Bobby's project came out of left field. I never talked to him, and he came in with an entire software product based on the approach, and as it should be. This is not, Simon Wardley has the same kind of outlook. It's like he put it out there, and he says it has his name on it. That's probably a big mistake, because now his face has to be plastered on it. But at least event modeling is something that doesn't have my name in it. So
a lot of talk about it.
What's that?
gets a lot of talks out of it, but
Yeah. So, same thing here. I'd be happy to shut the hell up as long as I could do event modeling as a part of my organization, because it's out there and there's way better, more eloquent speakers about it than me. That's my goal. I am an introvert, like I said. The only reason I do this is because I'm a logical thinker. The other things don't make sense to me when they're they're shown to me and say, this is really good, Adam. And say, no, it's not. I can logically show you how this is crap. Right? In my mind, that's what's going on. It's like, oh my God, please no.
well, I think you'll find, and this is where the argument, it's like it meets the goals of Agile, and I think you'll find, or goals of the goals that people had when they wanted these Agile practices, right?
Yeah.
The goals, and then they hardened the practices. But what you'll find is there are many companies that were successful with these Agile practices. But that's because if you actually dig into it, right, they were doing this information architecture, this customer, they had that.
Yeah.
They were doing that, right? Like you'll find
I'm going to disagree on a couple of cases, because a lot of times the level of dysfunction in the industry as a whole, we got into Moore's law and all this kind of stuff, was so high that the bar was very low for Agile to succeed. And so that's one of my other pet peeves about these arguments, is that the bar was very low, so these Agile people succeeded. Well, that's great. I probably can succeed with UML at a few other places that need some structure. But UML's good. It can probably help some people, right? So it's a tough one. I want to keep working on the wording with you, because I think we're dragging in we're pushing things a little too far in certain cases, where logically it doesn't, in my head it's not the right thing.
Something around, like, doesn't matter this practice, but the goals that we're trying to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we can agree on the goals, right?
Yep.
And if we can agree on, this is really the outcome, the goals and outcomes. If we can let's stop arguing about that. When the moment we have this argument, right? If we can shift it quicker to what are the primary goals, right? There's agility, there's the goals that we have in common. If you're an Agile proponent, I'm going to pick the top 3 goals, because I don't want to discuss all whatever. Let's take these top 3. Are these primary goals important to you? Now let's look, and how would we know, right? How do you know that's actually being met, right? Now the question is, okay, I believe that this set of techniques and ways of working achieve those goals better than any of those set of techniques have been doing, and by evidence, right? Now I'm talking fact with you. I'm talking about the goals we agree on. The practices we don't yet agree on, but that's really, we can argue about that. Maybe we both will discover that there's a combination one that's even better. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll just be honest.
Yeah, in all honesty, I mean, there's never 100% implementation, or it's really rare, unless we're in charge of the whole project, where it's just event modeling. It's always a combination of these folks are using Jira because they have some partners that use it, and so we have to translate some of these things. Maybe we'll stick some links into the Miro board that take them to the corresponding Jira ticket for that slice. That's fine. You do what you can, and you can't be extremist about things, but you might have to be extremist about things to explain a concept, to remove the other variables.
Yeah, I think, that's where, like, practicality, right? If you're having an argument over whether or not to use Jira, right, to use event modeling, then you've missed the point, right? Like, it's just like, okay, tell you what, practically, you use Jira, it's important for all sorts of other reasons. It's not worth our conversation. Let's just number the slices and put them in Jira.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do. That's exactly what we do. Yeah.
Let's just move, because honestly, that's a procedural waste of, it's not going to make a measurable difference in my goals.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I don't even want to spend time on it, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think honestly, like, so you do when you work with people in practice, but when you talk about, like, Jira, I want to get rid of Jira, and I say, but honestly, there's other things that you more want to get rid of,
Well,
which is
so
which is
just
the
well,
archetype
okay.
of
Yeah,
bad
I say those
architecture.
things because I want to drive the point of how much more important a different way of doing things is. And so I'm going to say things like uh, if I start a project for a client that has no developers and has no technical side, and they're going to look to us to do all the development, I'm going to tell them that we are not using Jira and we're going to elaborate on what we want. We're going to put it on the event model, and here's how we'll organize it. We'll, you know, highlight these areas for what we want to do next, and really just look at one. That idea that we're working off a blueprint, that blueprint mentality, will be the driving force. And I'm not going to introduce Jira because most of the companies out there use Jira.
Yeah, it basically in that context, Jira is unnecessary overhead.
Mm-hmm.
In the context where you, as an organization, have your record of what changed, like and who did, basically is in Jira, and like what work you've decided to do, like is in Jira, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this and other things, and just like where do I go look for this stuff to find out what's going on, what's changing, right?
Yep.
That's in Jira. Then it's overhead and waste to even talk about changing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Until maybe at some point, if the only thing, if you're
I
looking
do have
at
10
Jira,
minutes left. Just I went over an hour, but I know you're here late, so I want to stick around.
So, anyways, so that's kind of what I'm saying is that it's really quickly shift. What I'm asking is very quickly shift. If you don't put, like, when you make states about agile, have the word goals in there. That's it.
Yeah,
However you
I mean, I
want to-
might just the reason
that's
that
probably
again, Rick, I don't want to say I don't even want to say the word agile, honestly, but it's where I work in all those places, which is why it ends up in there. So maybe the people that are upset should be upset about agile being the silver bullet, because I'm needing to call out agile because it's everywhere.
well, most of
So the upsettedness,
the
when someone
people,
points a finger, there's, three fingers
most,
pointing back at them.
most of what they're upset, like basically, it's not about agile being the silver bullet. It's about every implementation, every kind of new practice becomes the new silver bullet, and that's the danger talking about this replaces that. So my silver bullet replaces that silver bullet, which is disingenuous, right? And that's really where I'm saying is
I don't know.
this meets the goals that we wanted out of those things, and we still want.
Well, TDD, how can TDD be a silver bullet? It only applies to developers. It's not used by everyone. So how is TDD going to help someone that's a project manager? They don't program, so it's not a silver bullet. So not all things are silver bullets, right? It's a way of thinking about things. So we had silver bullets for physics, right? We discovered the atom at one point, and that was the silver bullet because we could explain everything with it, and things that didn't make sense before now make sense because now we know there's atoms, right? And then subatomic, we had more questions, and then we discovered subatomic particles, and that became the silver bullet because we could explain things that we couldn't with atoms. And so I talk about this. Agile is really all encompassing, right? And so it proposed to be the atom, and event modeling is proposing to be the subatomic particle, right?
Agile is not all encompassing, and unfortunately,
well, I'll tell you why I say that, because no, I'll tell you why I say that. Let me qualify why I said that. I say agile is all encompassing because there's the rhetoric out there that says you're either an agile company or you're not. There's no agile practices, etc. So agile is an all encompassing thing if you think of that proposition that many people had, that you don't do agile, you are agile, you have an agile organization. That's not me making stuff up. That's what I heard, and that's how I had it presented and sold to me over the years.
Right. And unfortunately, that's okay. So those statements about being an agile company, right, existed, and were talked about well before the magical agile manifesto.
I
So
don't
they
know.
took a word.
I don't think it was as coined didn't hear
Oh.
about that until well after it was coined. So
Well, you didn't hear about it. That's right, because you weren't working necessarily with the business people who did those kind of like, how do we want to run our business and what's the
yeah,
but
I think it was I think it was very high level. Like it was a dictionary term. It wasn't
no,
a thing.
yeah, it was. Yeah, no, they took it and branded it as a set of techniques. Unfortunately, they took a word, co-opted it, and put a capital A on it, and branded it as a set of techniques.
There's a layer in between that's important.
Well,
That there is, yes, there is. This is what I'm getting at, is that there was a way that we are agile. We're way past the dictionary term, but we're not at the capital A. And that's that point I'm talking about, and that's actually quite important, because that's where the term meant so much more when we said we're an agile company post the manifesto.
right, and I think that's, yeah. Unfortunately,
It is unfortunate, yes, because I
it
mean,
co-opted
yeah.
it co-opted agility into a software development technique, right?
The
That's what
one
the
insight that I like that we've discovered is that information systems don't necessarily need to be about software only, right?
That's correct, and I
Yeah.
think that's where it's. I mean, bringing out like that's kind of what I battle is we bring in the business people in at that level, which is to really talk about what are we trying to accomplish and what are our outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really so goals and outcomes are where we can get the point, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, we're all
Whatever.
trying to succeed, right? Like, I mean, there's people that are, like I said, majority of people are good and want to push things forward and are progressive and are optimistic and are helpful. And you know, the strong opinions are the ones that that make us take different paths to that dreamland on the other side. And we have, we want people to be on our path because we believe it to be the faster one. And I think it comes out of a good place, no matter how
Yeah,
abrasive you take me to be. I
yeah.
think it's a
So
fact that I actually want you to have and share in the success. And I really have no interest in driving a gold car. It's about helping everyone around me.
so
And it comes from a way of seeing illogical conclusions where I
yeah,
know logically that this is a better way, where you kind of draw a line in the sand and you dig your feet in because it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile hill to die on. Not all of them
so
are, but some are, and
yeah,
we dig in and we stand for it because I think that's what you need as you're pushing things forward. There's a point in time where you put in an anchor, and then you just do the hard pulling, no
yeah,
matter how many people spit on you or whatever. It's fine.
yeah. I
You're
mean, I just want to. I know you got to go here, and I
Yeah,
want to just talk
I got
about.
yeah, I got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let basically one of the so the challenges that like I get, like when we push in and we get the conversation, and that's not really what you say those statements to be mean and attract people's attention and really, but fundamentally,
Well, inadvertently a lot of times too.
inadvertently, but you fundamentally you inadvertently say that great, but then when I like instant responses like that's not like when I push back and say well that you don't exactly mean that, right? Because I tell people then he actually understands the thing, and it's like so and people will push back and say Adam, that's not exactly what you mean, right? You don't really mean that this is a full-on replacement for all of agile, and and your initial gut response follows up with no, that's exactly what I mean. You say those words.
Yep.
So what I'm warning you is like so that becomes at that point you now I know you don't mean that, right? But now you've reinforced it that I am, that superficial statement. I am full on with I do mean it only superficially. They're pushing at you. You don't mean it superficially, do you? And you push back. So what I'm asking you is if you
Yeah.
bring the word goals in there, that heals that misunderstanding.
Yeah,
Because
maybe.
you
I mean,
tell
we're all working on better
so,
ways to communicate. I certainly
so,
changed my tune from being, event sourcing only, and we're doing
so
event
and,
modeling for traditional things. And
and that's
maybe,
kind of why
maybe as maybe it's the fact that I get agile thrown in my face that makes that my default thing. It's like, oh yeah, I'll just say yeah, I'll replace it.
we've
know.
all been beaten by agile, and we
Yeah.
all get your feeling. Like, I mean, honestly, so we all get that, right? We
And
get the desire.
and
But
honestly,
we
like
also,
what you're
when Mars
talking
says
about,
we've been beaten by the people who want to replace agile with some subset.
yeah, of course, the certifications and all sorts of things, safe,
And
and
so,
we went over these all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
so really, what I'm asking is, the moment the conversation sets up, if you can respond with the word goals in it, that's really my
I
hint to
will
you.
when I will, but
Honestly, it
I
changes the world.
I know I can't I can't promise to
Oh, I don't actually ask you to promise.
not make a mistake and to not use the wrong word or to not get caught up in the heat of the moment when someone just peed on
Yeah.
my parade with some BS thing. I'm gonna tweet that agile sucks, and it is a reaction, and it's honest.
I get it.
And
And
it's
then,
honest because
but
that's how I felt, right? Like if they didn't have agile, I'd actually move this ahead and they'd have a project that was fine. And I care about what I do. I want people to succeed. And when I see artificial reasons or even worse, like actual nefarious reasons for certain things not going through, I get mad because I see good people getting caught in the middle of crap.
So
And
the truth is, if
so
they didn't have agile or some other subversion of agile technique, they'd have some other gobbledygook horrendous momentum.
I will, and I hope that people do,
So-
ask exactly, what do you mean, and ask for details because I will explain it.
I think if you can just basically have that instinct, because literally that's my challenge with when I talk with you, is I say you don't mean exactly that, and then your initial statement is immediate. No, that's exactly what I mean.
And
Nothing else.
I still
And
do.
I still
do
I mean
because
nothing else. I don't mean it any deeper. I don't mean the goals of agile. I
yeah,
mean
but
just
it's
your replacement.
I'm being argumentative. I'm a super jerk for being argumentative, but I don't want a blanket statement about me that doesn't truly paint what I'm agreeing to. And I think what it is that when I say agile, yes, I can quantify it, but I think the extra effort of doing all those things may actually derail the entire succinctness of what I'm saying. And I think the initial my initial reaction is still true and honest, and I think that I will continue to tick people off. Maybe less so. Maybe I will, maybe it'll be like 50% less because of our talks here, and I'll be more sensitive to, what people's situations are at their work and things like that. Of course, and I can always work on being more pleasant. I mean, that's great. It'll help my business probably.
Not to tick people off, not to just challenge that thing that just has bothered you, right? And just say it straight up because it irritates you. And so many other people agree with it. Like many developers, I want to replace agile, and then what do they want to replace it with? And they list, this agile thing. And I'm like, okay, well that's kind of a crazy conversation. Let's dig back to what are our goals, and then what do you want to accomplish? Because otherwise, we'll talk in circles for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
That's really,
I understand.
What I'm trying to push
I got to run, Rick, because I have a meeting like in 10 seconds. So.
Okay. Yeah, good.
But I appreciate it. I hope you get a chance to listen to the beginning of the meetup because I actually went into like self analysis of my psychology and what my personality type is, and I had some pretty cool discoveries just by studying up on it last week. So anyway, I hope you have a listen to that, and we can continue next week.
Right.
Thanks. Have a wonderful weekend, Rick. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.